And now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Connolly. School's in, bitches.
And welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I am your host, Jeff Connolly, and we are going to do a huge Q&A today. Now, a lot of people have been asking me why I'm not doing biographies. And the reason right now why I am not doing that is because we are getting ready to switch platforms. It's still not a done deal. There's still some talking going on, and I can't really get into it. But I wanted to save some of the things like the Detroit show and some of these other things that I am doing behind the scenes for the new platform. I cannot give you a time date on that, but I will know for certain for 100% in the next 2 weeks exactly what this is going to entail. I can't go into why there's been a delay. It has nothing to do with the deal not being there because that's what the haters will say. It's just anytime you have a deal and you're working things out, it takes a little bit of time. So that's what's going on with that. I should know in 2 weeks. It's either going to be one way or the other in 2 weeks. So other than that, we are going to do the Q&A, like I said, and we are also going to cover Whitey Bulger. Not from a biographical standpoint, obviously, but we are going to talk about a couple of things that I think is worth talking about. You know, was Whitey Bulger a rat? Certifiably, was he a rat? I can tell you yes, but there are some things that we have to discuss. If you have not seen the documentary, The United States of America versus Whitey Bulger, you should go out and watch that. I think there's a copy of it on YouTube for free you can watch. It asks a lot of questions, and that's one of the things that we are going to discuss today. So that's exactly what's going on as far as that goes. So here's what we have this week for news and notes. We obviously now know more about Norton, Grant Norton, that is. In case you haven't been following it, obviously we know that Pat Musitano was killed. Obviously we know that Grant Norton was killed, but we know more about what happened with Norton, at least at this point. Obviously, he was found dead in the woods with 2 in the back of his head on July 12th. He had gone missing on July 6th, which was prior to Musitano's death. Law enforcement has acknowledged that Norton was killed, obviously prior to the hit on Pat Musitano. Norton allegedly, at least from the law enforcement perspective, had been on the lam avoiding fraud charges. Also, according to law enforcement, Norton was the head of the Havana Supplies. Havana Supplies was basically a company that did a whole bunch of different things, selling soil, et cetera, but they had collected some $110 million a month, not a year, a month in contracts from CN Rail, Metrolinx, and 3 different casinos. Those companies have all said that they never heard of Havana Group, nor were those contracts valid. So obviously we have some fraudulent contracts and they're moving money around. That was complete news to them. Pat Musitano was also a minority shareholder in that group. Prior to his murder, Norton had skipped out on a court hearing over the fraud charges. He didn't show up, therefore an arrest warrant was issued for him, and he ends up going on the lam. And the cops were not able to get to him before the mob did. It's widely believed that Andrangeta was behind the hit and not the Musitanos. Andrangeta appears to be tightening the noose around whatever is left of the Musitanos, and that Norton may have likely just been collateral damage more than anything. It has all the earmarkings, pretty much of a hostile takeover. Somebody who wished to remain off the record told me literally verbatim, if you think Andrangeta or any other group wanting to take over Hamilton, Ontario, Canada is going to leave witnesses alive, you're out of your mind. More bodies will hit the ground. This is just the beginning. And so you have to look at this from the perspective of 2 ways. Either Andrangeta is totally responsible for all of this, and they take out Norton for a very big reason. And why would you take him out? To send a message, 1, to Pat Musitano, that's number 1, and 2, you're cutting off the supply chain of money. If you take the guy out that is laundering $110 million a month, then you're then you're cutting the money from underneath of them. And that, to me, is sort of indicative of what I think is going on there now at this point anyway. And I think a lot of this is Andrangheta's moving in to take over. Do I think this is going to be the last murder we see? No, I think there's going to be a lot of other stuff going on, but this is sort of the way it appears now. A lot of people have asked me if they thought that Musitano was behind killing Norton, and I don't think so. He was trying to protect his money. I think this was probably a move from an enemy. Take out the money supply, and that's exactly what happened. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Also, we got more Andrangheta news, this time coming out of Germany. Germany has always been a long, big stronghold for Andrangheta. It has been for a long time, and we're seeing now how Andrangheta is moving into at least gaining an inroad into the German markets. Obviously, there is a... just follow me on this. Hopefully it'll make more sense. There's a German fintech pioneer who has had some problems. So it's a scandal-plagued company called Wirecard. And what happened was Wirecard counted among its payments and processing clients on an online casino who was basically the financial arm of Andrangheta. As of August 3rd, this broke. The article cited that Italian legal sources have said that Andrangheta was really the front behind Centurion Bet, which was an online gaming company based in Malta. The Financial Times also reported that Wirecard's relationship with the Centurion Bet ended in 2017 when its gambling license was suspended by Maltese authorities, and it ceased trading after an anti-mafia raid that saw over 70 people arrested. Since then, more than 30 people have been sentenced for mafia-related crimes relating to that particular case. Obviously, Wirecard declined to comment on the news that is breaking. It's not even really clear whether the bank knew what was going on, or whether or not the bank itself was sort of using different money laundering techniques to skirt money laundering regulations. Leading up to June of this year, Wirecard pretty much was one of the favorite amongst investors, trading more than $100 per share. When the company admitted that $1 billion in assets didn't exist, they filed for bankruptcy. The stock crashed to almost $1 per share. On June 18th, founder Marcus Braun resigned. A week later, Braun was arrested in Germany and released on $5 million bail, and he is charged with fraudulently inflating earnings. So pump and dump scheme, so to speak. Also, according to investigators, the Andrangheta from southern Italy, is obviously behind this, and apparently they've brought in the Central American drug cartels as well. So what Andrangheta, at least according to what is coming out, was using different shell companies to launder money, and this is something that has been going on for a long time. This is nothing that has changed, and here you have. At least if we are to believe these allegations, that Andrangheta has really, really pushed themselves into the financial market, which they've been doing in Italy. So we'll see how that all plays out, but that's nothing surprising to me, to be honest with you. All right, so there is a new Mafia series coming out, and it's going to come from Terrence Winter and Nick Pileggi. Obviously, Nick Pileggi was responsible for Goodfellas. Terrence Winter was a writer on the show The Sopranos. And according to what has broken today by Deadline, Showtime and Imagine Television Studios will be producing it. And there's no news on cast or anything like that. But what this is going to be about, allegedly, is it's going to be a look at the evolution of organized crime in America through the ages, and the role of the first organized crime families involvement in that. I have heard it's going to be the Genovese crime family, so I would imagine it's going to start with Luciano and go all the way through. It's going to be interesting to see what they're going to be able to do, but just because Nick Pileggi's involved and Terrence Winter is involved doesn't mean it's going to be any good. I think Nick Pileggi took a lot of fucking... I'm trying to think of the right fucking words here, but I think he took a lot of what Henry Hill said and believed it. And that doesn't make him a bad writer. He can only do what he's given. But I just think just because you have two writers from two different shows doesn't mean it's going to be any good. I don't, not much more has come out about it. But we'll see how that goes. And this sort of comes with something I want to address really fucking quick, and then we'll move on to a commercial and then come back for the Q&A. I've been getting a lot of questions about the Flanagans. The reason why I'm not answering them is because there's nothing to answer at this point. I think anytime you have a pandemic, and you still have scenes to shoot, you still got to finish doing certain things, you can't do it with a pandemic. You just can't. You have to worry about the cast that's involved in it. You got to worry about making sure everybody's protected. So what is going on is there are still things that need to be basically completed and finished. We didn't end up getting the filmmaking done. And I think that, and I don't want to go too far, but I think the fact that there is probably going to be some casting changes, and I think the fact that maybe a scene or two is going to be reshot amongst the stuff we didn't finish, that's what the holdup is. And until we can get to a point where it's safe to do that, then it's sort of in a holding pattern, and that's just the reality of it. And the reason why I don't answer that, at least on a personal level, when people ask me these things, is because I don't have time for it, and B, there's really nothing to say. Nothing has changed since the last time I addressed this, and this is the last time I will address it. And I will say this, that there are some people who are making claims about it, like they know everything, and they don't. Cast members don't know what's going on. Only myself and the producers of that show know what's going on, and we're not communicating with them about that because it doesn't concern them at this point. Anybody that is still left to sort of finish up, they know what's going on, only from the perspective of they know they haven't done their stuff. So it's not a matter of hiding anything. It's not a matter of there's just nothing to say. There's just nothing to say. And sometimes you deal with people that simply just don't understand that decision-making process has nothing to do with them. And that's just the bare bones of it. It's between myself, my two business partners, and that's the way it'll be. And when it's done, it's done. All this bullshit and nonsense about premiere parties is a fucking joke. I don't know where people get delusions. So either way, at the end of the day, when we're able to finish it and edit it and see what we have, then we'll be able to talk about it. But until then, it's just a holding pattern. That's all it is. So don't believe the nonsense and don't believe the rumors. So all that being said, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into the Q&A. Stay tuned on Mob Talk Radio. On a given week, I'm out of town a lot. Whether it's Philadelphia, it's New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, wherever the case may be, I'm always looking for a place where I can sit down and have a great dinner. Ambiance is key, price is obviously key, but the most important thing is the food good? And there's a place I want to tell you about today. It's called Saltwater at Margate. If you are going down to the shore, because I know a lot of people in Philadelphia go to the shore, especially Margate, you're missing out on a great restaurant if you haven't been there. The name is Saltwater Margate. It's at 9401 Ventnor Avenue, Margate City, New Jersey. The phone number there is 609-289-8078. You can also visit them online at saltwatermargate.com. This place is unbelievable. Not only is the food absolutely superb, the price is great too. They're renowned for their pizza and their gnocchi. They have all kinds of different things from mussels to roast pork and Italian fare. So do yourself a favor, do me a favor, go and visit Saltwater Margate. You will not be disappointed. It is a place that I think at some point, if not already, there's going to be lines out the door and around the block. So if you're down on the shore, stop in, go to Saltwater Margate. At least check them out online at saltwatermargate.com. I know at times we like to have a lot of fun on this show, but it's time to get serious about one thing. I know that the coronavirus pandemic has hurt a lot of my listeners and their businesses. Restaurants have been ordered to close, gyms have been ordered to close, cigar lounges have been ordered to close, and even bars have been ordered to close. These are small businesses that don't always have the cash reserves to continue making their rent or mortgage payments. They can't even pay their vendors. My good friend Mike Kaysen of Kaysen & Kaysen is an experienced bankruptcy lawyer that is there to help you right now. Kaysen & Kaysen represents individuals and small businesses in complex bankruptcy proceedings in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Miami. Give Mike a call at 646-397-6226. And if you mention Mob Talk Radio, he's going to give you a free consultation. Once again, it's Mike Kaysen of Kaysen & Kaysen, 646-397-6226. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. Now, per the usual, and I hate explaining this every week, but I'm going to do it anyway, again and again. And I'm probably going to keep fucking doing it till I shit cactuses or a giraffe or something. But here's the deal. Usually on Monday or Tuesday of every week, if you go over to Facebook and you type in Mob Talk Radio, you will see Q&A and Go. That is where you can put your questions, or you could message me privately either on Instagram or over on Facebook. If I don't get to your question, there's a couple of reasons why. One, it's either too in-depth for me to answer in one sitting, or two, it's just been asked a million different times. Yes, would I love to categorize my shows where I write down every question and what postmark number I answered it? I'd love to do that, but that takes way too much fucking time, and I'm just not going to get into that whole thing. So if I miss your question, it's just for various different reasons. All right, so getting right into it today, we've got a ton of questions to get to. Some I did intentionally bypass today just because it's way too in-depth. Some are a little more personal than others, but we'll see what we got. All right, do you think Della Croce was made under Mangano or Anastasia? Also, do you think Fat Tony was made under Luciano or Costello? Likely, probably, under Della Croce, under Anastasia, probably, definitely. Salerno came up in the Luciano crime family under Trigger Mike Coppola, and after Coppola dipped out, Salerno just sort of absorbed his crew. So logically, I think that we can say that Luciano gave the go-ahead for induction. But who sponsored him, I couldn't obviously tell you. I mean, you got to be sponsored by somebody, and believe me, it wouldn't have been Luciano who sponsored anybody, so it had to come from somebody, but I don't know who that somebody was. All right. I know you have a personal beef with George Anastasia, and I get it. Could you explain to people why you have a beef? Because I personally feel like if people heard the reason why, then they'd understand the venom that you have for him. Also, if you had to sit down with him or Ratweiser, which one would you sit down with and why? So I've talked about this a million different fucking times. Listen, and I can't legally sort of go into some of it, but what I can tell you is there was a situation where George Anastasia's name was used sort of in a I don't want to say extortion because that's obviously the wrong term. But there was a situation between me and somebody else, and I don't even want to give out this information because it involves family and etc. But there was somebody who used George Anastasia's name to say that they were going to get a meeting with my family, and it was a soft intimidation to get me to shut up about somebody. And while that's all fine and dandy, what had happened was we fired off, my attorney at the time fired off a letter to George Anastasia, basically telling him that this is what this person is alleging, and it would, be in your best interest to come out against that and say that I would never condone that type of shit. That's not true. And George Anastasia just refused to say anything. And it pissed me off because I think if you're a fucking journalist and you're an author, I think you have to toe the line somewhere with something anyway. And the fact that George Anastasia ultimately refused to say a word and just ignored it like it was unimportant and not something he should be concerned with, it showed me what a punk bitch George Anastasia is. He's a punk, okay? And that's where I stand. Now, I don't need anybody to come out and say, oh, this is a horrible thing somebody said, and I would never get involved in this. But that's what you do as a common, decent fucking person. And the fact that he didn't, told me a lot about him as a person. I've sort of let go of all that. But that is something that I can safely say. He would rather give precedence to somebody who is an informant than he would somebody that's not doing nothing wrong. And why somebody would intentionally allow their names to be used to soft-core intimidate my family is just disgusting. That's why I have a beef with him. But I can't really get into like all the X's and O's of that, and I've talked about it over the years, and everybody kind of knows why. As far as sitting down with him or Ratweiser, which one? If I had to sit down with one of them, it would be George. Listen, I don't like the guy, but I think I could get along with him on a certain kind of level. I think we know enough about the stuff that we do that we could have a normal, decent conversation. I wouldn't go out of my way to fuck with George Anastasia and insult him. I've done that over the years, but I'm pretty much done with that. But I would not. I mean, I would not, under any fucking circumstance, sit next to that piece of shit Dave Ratweiser. The guy's a fucking jerk off. He's got some sort of crush on Joey Merlino. He's got some sort of crush on gangsters in general, and he's a prick. That's the truth. I've been within a foot of that prick, and he's got a big mouth. It's always amazing. These guys have such a big fucking mouth when they got a camera in their fucking arms, and their hoodlum rat journalist standing next to him holding his fucking hand. The other reason why I don't like the guy is because he lies. He lies. He puts that rat moniker on fucking guys that aren't rats, and he thinks he gets away with it. He thinks he's cute and shit like that. That's why I have a problem with him. It's one thing if you're going to call yourself a journalist and you're going to report a story, but I've caught the guy lying multiple times, and I called him out on it. And so I know the feeling's very mutual. We don't like one another, but he's a punk, and he's a fucking idiot. And I don't know anybody in the streets that likes that guy. They may just nod and smile, when he's around, but I don't like that guy. The guy's a fucking jerk off. He's a liar. And the one thing you don't do as a journalist is you do not say a guy's an informant, or at least give the sort of allure that a guy could be an informant when, one, that's not true, but you only do it because you want to fucking get people to bite on the bullshit that you print. And that's all it is. I mean, it's reckless as fuck. It puts guys on the streets in a situation, but real guys will know that he's full of shit. But I just think that at the end of the day, you sort of have a duty if you're going to call yourself a fucking Emmy-winning journalist, which he is an Emmy-winning journalist. But if you're going to call yourself a fucking journalist, you shouldn't be that reckless. And you sure as hell shouldn't post or not post, but you shouldn't have like Joey Merlino posters in your fucking bedroom, fucking creep show. And no, he really doesn't have, posters of Joey Merlino, but it apparently, he's got some sort of thing. So Joey, be careful out there. You never know what that guy's up to. He has a couple belts in him. You might want to just avoid the whole scene. But no, Ratweiser's a fucking jerk off. A complete jerk off. All right. It's obvious you have a lot of friendships with people from the streets. So my question is somewhat quasi-psychological. What is the best advice from a gangster? And if and when you are around them, are you yourself or do you keep your guard up at all times? Do you ever get scared? How do you interact with people like that, knowing that quite possibly, maybe, according to the police, they have killed somebody? So the best way of probably answering this, the best advice I've ever given is somebody told me at one point, and then they tell me all the time, is that you cannot give credence, you cannot give validity to fucking nitwits. You can't give them an inch. You cannot give them any notoriety, because that's what they want at the end of the day, right? So I got a lot of haters just like everybody else does. If you do anything like podcasting or you do anything publicly, you're always going to have people that don't fucking like you. Look at Howard Stern. For a long time, people liked him. The minute he sort of changed how he did things, then they started calling him names, saying he sold out, all of this, that, and the third. And then they even go so far as to say he wears a wig, and it's just et cetera, et cetera. Well, the same thing happens to me. And you have to ask yourself, especially if you've done nothing wrong to people. I mean, nothing wrong to them at all. Why are they attacking you the way they do? And for a long time, I fed into that. And I'd bite back and do some stupid shit. But at the end of the day, they're fucking nothing. These are 40-year-old people that sit in a basement and have nothing better to do with their time but like make up lies about me, say horrible things, start fake pages about me. Like, how desperate you got to be to devote your time and energy to, like, making up crazy fairy tales about people. And there's a lot of people that do it, and it's okay. They're entitled to do it. They could do it all day long because all it does is fucking, help promote my show. So if they want to keep doing it and keep helping promote my show, congratulations. Thank you very much for the fucking help, you bunch of jerk-offs. But I just think at the end of the day, the best advice that I've gotten is just don't pay them no attention. And I really don't. I really don't. If anybody thinks I read what they have to say, they're out of their fucking minds, because I'm doing what I'm doing. I have a big base of supporters, a lot of people that like what I do. So what, I'm going to get all bent about what 3 people jerking off in the playpen together do? No, I don't give a fuck. But as far as, what's the other part of this question? Listen, I don't get scared around anybody. There's no reason for me to be. Intimidated? Nah, maybe once or twice in my life, but no, for the most part, I'm just myself. I mean, I don't need to pretend to be something I'm not. People will people will consistently say, I pretend to be this, I pretend to be that. And I think that they do that shit because they're delusional. They're delusional. Oh, it's a tough guy routine. It's not. If you think it is, come see me. I'll show you it's not a fucking tough guy routine. That's just how I am. I don't need to pretend to be anything. But yet it's funny because the same sort of people, and I hate to even bring this up, but the same sort of fucking people who will sit there and say, oh, he's playing tough guy. He believes he's in this. Listen, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. And the people that always have everything to say it about you, not to you. And that's a big point. When they say it about you, not to you, that tells you who they are as a man. But do I keep my guard up around anybody that I know from the streets? No. Why would I keep my guard up? I've got nothing to take from them. I've got no reason to fuck them over. Any friendships or whatever you want to call it that I have with anybody is based on me, this guy, not some sort of narrative or not some tough guy routine. Because believe me, let me tell you something at the end of the day, because most of the people that say these sort of things aren't tough guys to begin with. But two, don't you think, has it ever crossed your mind that if I was everything that you said I was, why would any of these people even associate with me? They wouldn't, okay? They know what tough guys are. They're around tough guys their whole life. If I was all of these things that you keep claiming, believe me, nobody would have anything to do with me. So I think you need to check yourself at the fucking door, some of the nonsense you say. But as far as interacting with guys that quite possibly could have killed somebody, listen, if anybody that I have ever interacted with has killed somebody, that's on them. What's it got to do with me? I'm a little different than sort of the average fucking bear when it comes to this, because it's my belief, and I'm not justifying murder, that these guys do whatever the fuck they do. What they did before I met them has no inclusion to what or how I act with them now. If Roy DeMeo doesn't get killed and I meet him now and he allegedly killed 20 people in 1982, what's that got to do with me now? And they only kill themselves. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying they don't run around going down the street to the bodega killing, Anthony and Marco and whoever the fuck else for no fucking reason. They kill each other. That's their business and that's what they do. So why would that bother me? I have had situations, I think, in my life where I've sat across from somebody that I know, that I certifiably know have killed people. But what does that got to do with me? That's not how they treat me. That's their business, and I don't get involved in that. It's the same question you could ask Frank Sinatra back in the day. How can you sit with this one? He allegedly killed that one. Well, it is what it is. I get along with people on a personal fucking level because of who I am. Not because of what I want people to think I am, but because of who I am. If people didn't trust me and they didn't know I wasn't a stand-up guy, they would have nothing to do with me, and that's the truth. But no, I don't sit across from a guy, eating pasta going, I wonder if he cut that guy's head off like everybody says. It doesn't even cross my mind, because the conversations that I have with anybody is normal. We have normal conversations. The weather, kids, family, this happened in the news, that happened in the news. We don't sit there at the table talking about, I took a fucking hacksaw to his fucking eyeballs and ate them. We don't have conversations like that. Not only are they not going to talk openly about that kind of shit to begin with, but it's just, I think people have a very skewed sort of a skewed storyline or a narrative of street guys. They all think that it's like Goodfellas. It's not. And that's the difference between, say me and a lot of other people, is a lot of these other people have never been around guys like this in their life, and they think it's, it's being around Jimmy Burke or Robert De Niro's characterization of Jimmy Burke. And it's not like that. These are normal guys as far as day-to-day routine. It's just what they do for a living is a little bit different than everybody else. So I'm not nullifying any of that. I'm just telling you that you have a very Hollywood bastardized sort of characterization of who you think these guys are. Some guys are serious. They're serious fucking guys. But you, like I say it all the time, you act like a gentleman, you're going to be treated like one. So from my perspective, anybody that I've ever had dinner with, sat down with, gone out with, had drinks with, that may or may not have allegedly done this, that, and the third, has no effect on me, because I judge them and who they are, how they treat me. And I think a lot of them are the same way. All right. Oh, boy. All right. Do you like John Gotti Jr.? I notice you don't talk about him. No, I don't like the guy. I don't have no respect for the guy. I just don't like him. I can't stand him, and that's the truth. There's going to be some people that are like, oh, he used to defend people. Well, sure, right? So I defended a lot of people, but once you get to know somebody a little bit, you either like them or you don't. And in that case, I don't. And that's not, I could go into a lot of different reasons why, but I'm not. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I'm irrelevant to him. He's irrelevant to me, and we just keep it moving. That's all there is to it. I'm not going to talk shit about nobody. I'm just going to tell you, I don't fucking like the guy. I never really did. And that's it. All right. All right. If you had a dinner party and you could invite 5 alleged wise guys, dead or alive, who would it be and why? Vincent Gigante, obviously, because I just think historically speaking, there's a lot of cool stories he could tell. Not that he would, so it would sort of be irrelevant to dinner with him. Tony Salerno, because this guy made $1 billion. This guy made $1 billion. He was in the 116th Street crew. This guy was like a walking historical fucking monument to me. I would love to just pick his brain on just a whole bunch of different things. But I think that anytime you sit down with anybody, be it gangsters, be it business guys, you always want to pick their brain to figure out at what point did they go from just being like another fucking street hoodlum on the corner to somebody that was ingenious in a lot of fucking ways. Joey Merlino, I would sit down, obviously. I'm not going to go into why. Just shoot the shit about sports, cigars, and whatever the fuck. George Borghese, I would sit down with him and have a conversation about all kinds of different things. Probably the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles with him. We're both Eagles fans. And probably Lucky Luciano, because I would love to know from Luciano's perspective how exactly he was able to take the commission sort of formula and put that into play, and what his concerns might have been as far as, okay, is this group going to bite back because they don't want this? They're looking at you like it's a monopoly. I would just love to pick his brain, because it took a lot of balls to do that. And I want to talk to him about the obviously the Sicilian Wars, the Neapolitan Wars that happened, and how that all ironed out. He was another one that was a walking history book. So absolutely. All right, where are we? Okay, I get very interested in your show and others, and I feel like I have a grip on timelines, families, etc. And then if I'm a couple of weeks without listening, I lose it all. Are there any really good infographics for other ways to just tie it all together from the families and the main players and each in their main claim? Yeah, there's a bunch of different websites you could go to, obviously, that where you can like look at the hierarchy. They do like pyramid hierarchy photos and stuff like that. Or you can wait till my next platform when I do a whole entire history of each individual organized crime family, which is going to be huge. I've been working on it for months, believe it or not. And that's one of the things that we are going to do on the new show. So while that may not, answer your question totally today, just have a little patience, please. And maybe we could do something about that. All right. All right. Everyone always puts the hypothetical question out of which family will win in a war against the others. I'm going to propose something a little bit different. What crew in any type of time period was the best, most powerful crew of all time? I'm saying Trigger Mike Coppola's crew is the greatest crew ever assembled. I would tend to agree with you on that, because the 116th Street crew was just absolutely unreal. Obviously, Tony Salerno was in that crew, and I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. The 116th Street crew, for those that don't know, was designed by the Morello brothers back in the 1890s. It began as a simple shakedown racket, and they would end up taking over Little Italy. That move would create the Camorra Mafia war between Brooklyn and Manhattan and Harlem. It was a war over turf and control over the Italian rackets in the city. Eventually, all the remaining survivors of that war, specifically from the Camorra side, would end up joining the Sicilians, and the rest is history. So from my perspective, other than Murder, Inc., I gotta agree with you. I think Trigger Mike, 100%. All right, now this is a question that I totally don't understand, but I'm gonna try to answer it. Of everyone that you've seen turn fed in this, who on the street amongst guys in conversation, this is where I get lost. Let me see if I can try to just dice it. Okay, of everyone that you've seen turn I would assume federal informant, who on the street amongst guys in conversation, or just in general, it could be Philly or New York, is still respected by guys or you may see guys give a pass to others, or at least understand, or once you go that route, it's over. Everything you have done doesn't matter because it feels like Joey Musitano should go there. He only turned because of the death penalty, and we've never heard from him again. So I'm a little confused by the question, but I think I understand. So if I get this wrong, message me, explain it differently, and I'll try to get back to this question the next show we do. But listen, once you go federal informant, nobody's going to talk to you. It's over. I think anybody that I've ever associated with on any kind of level, had an association with on any kind of level, does not have any respect for rats on any fucking kind of level. I've heard at times guys talk about Joey Musitano, basically saying the guy was smart as a whip, and had he not gone the way that he did, he would have ended up running the commission. We can agree to disagree on whether that's the truth or not, but guys typically stop after that. They'll say something positive like, this guy had a lot of power, but then they end up shaking their heads and go, fucking rat. Look at what he did. So on one hand, they're giving him just a tiny bit of respect for who they were in the streets, but then once they step over that line, it's over. And to me, nobody respects what he did. Look, Tommy Patera was threatened with the death penalty. He didn't fucking blink, and he got a life sentence, over and done with. So why couldn't Joey Musitano do that? The odds of them really giving Musitano the death penalty was a threat. I mean, I don't think that they would have been able to get the death penalty, to be honest with you, because he could have made an argument in court that, well, listen, Roy DeMeo, or this one, not Roy DeMeo, it's a bad reference, but this one killed Sammy Gravano. He killed 19 fucking people. You let him walk the fuck out. But you weren't going to give him the fucking death penalty. So I think he could have made an argument as far as that goes. But like I said, Tommy Patera got threatened with that. He didn't blink. He didn't blink a fucking inch and took took the hit like a fucking man and went to prison. Joey Musitano could have done the same thing. So I really don't buy the idea that because they were putting the death penalty on the table, that was totally what was going to happen. They basically used that to get him to get scared, and then he ratted. And that's what he did. And that's the difference between a rat and a fucking man. A man looks at the feds when they say that and goes, yeah, go ahead. Do what you got to do. I just cannot have sympathy for somebody on Monday who orders the death of 20 people and then on Tuesday doesn't want to go to jail, so they squeal on everybody. And I say this all the time. If you want to live that life, be a guy, be a gentleman, be a guy through and through. You have to come to terms with the ends justifying the means. I cannot sympathize or give a pass to anybody who does that. So the old saying is, and I tell you all the fucking time, and I use this reference of, you get in a car with 6 guys, they're going to rob a fucking bank, you agree to go along and drive. You know what you're getting into the minute you step in that car. Nobody just gets in a car with everybody in ski masks and guns and says, okay, drive to the bank, and they go, what are we doing? No, I'm not having no part of that. No, they get in the car, they go, somebody gets caught, somebody squeals. Next thing you know, this motherfucker will turn around and say, oh, I didn't do that. I wanted nothing to do with that. And they tell on everybody because they don't want to go to jail. That's the bottom fucking line. It's not that they have a come to Jesus moment like Michael Francis keeps claiming. They simply do not want to do a day in fucking jail. Well, here's the thing. Don't pull a gun if you're not going to shoot somebody. And if you're going to shoot somebody, fucking kill them. Like, don't shoot them in the ass, the arm. Like, kill them. Just, if you're gonna get more time for maiming a motherfucker than murder itself. So don't get involved in the life if you can't do a day in jail. And I'll give you a reference because I'm open-ended and I'm honest about who I am. When I got in a lot of trouble years and years and years and years and years ago, I knew exactly what the fuck I was doing. I knew that there were ramifications for if I got caught doing what I was doing. But to me, at the time, being a young kid, I thought, well, the ends justify the fucking means here. This is a lot of fucking money. I'm getting involved. And if I have to take a pinch, so what? I've never been locked up before. I'll take a small pinch. That'll be it. That's not the way it happened. Okay? And they were going to throw a ton of years at me. A ton. So where I was at there as a kid mentally versus where I'm at now is totally different. I tell people all the time, and I'm glorifying crime, and I'm not telling you to go out and break the law, but do the fucking math. If somebody comes to you and says, oh, I got this, we're going to go do this, and you're going to make 10 grand. Okay, so if it's like armed robbery, first of all, you're going to do 25 to life for armed robbery anyway. I don't care how many times you've not been caught. If you take a pinch like that, you're going to go to prison. So your cut of 10 grand split between 5 people is $1,000. You are going to risk going to fucking prison for the rest of your life for $1,000 fucking dollars? Do the math. Go work at fucking McDonald's. Okay, 20 years. What can I make at McDonald's versus what I'm going to get out of this crime? Guys don't think like that. It ain't worth it if... And I use this formula, and I tell a lot of people all the time when I have these conversations, is if you're going to do something dumb, make sure it's for more fucking money than you could ever make and the amount of time you're going to sit in the fucking can. Is it 500 here, 500 there? I get it. People got bills to pay. But look at what the penalty is going to be versus what you're getting out of it. And if that math don't add up, don't fucking do it. But these are the guys that go and do this stupid shit. They get caught and they fucking rat. This is how it happens. And I can't really say it any better than that. And look, there's going to be assholes that are going to come out and say, oh, see, he's glorifying crime. I'm not glorifying crime. I'm telling you, if you're going to go do it, look at the money you're going to get versus the amount of time you're going to get. Is it worth 20 years for $1,000 fucking dollars? You're better off robbing a goddamn bank. I'm just telling you. All right, who ordered the hit on Tony Spilatro, and why was it necessary to whack his brother, Michael? So ultimately, that order would have come from Paul Ricca or Tony Accardo. I had heard a couple of years ago that Russell Bufalino is really the one who wanted to push that button big time as far as reaching out, saying he had to go. But obviously, I wasn't there. But either way, even if Bufalino had suggested that, Paul Ricca and Tony Accardo would have been the ones who have to greenlight it. It was necessary to kill Michael because, one, he knew too much, and two, by killing Tony, they didn't want to leave any room or have a situation where there would be retribution or an opportunity for Michael Spilatro to turn team fed. That's exactly why it was done. All right, outside of Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, what U.S. family right now around the country or in recent years would be surprised to hear is doing well? Most seem to be defunct or small compared to their heyday. Detroit. Everybody forgets about Detroit. Detroit is not small. Detroit is very active. They're very dangerous, but they're also very quiet. And when you're quiet, that's a good sign. Trust me. All right. Your show is great, but I've never heard anyone ask about Harmit. I cannot pronounce this last name, so if I get it wrong, don't bust my balls over it. It's spelled Graewe. I'm going to say Gray. From Cleveland. I've read somewhere that the Mafia are not allowed to kill on Mother's Day. Is that true, or is this just a stupid question? I'm just curious. Believe it or not, I have never, ever heard that before. If there was something like that, it would have been way back like in the 1930s and the 1940s. Post 1965, forget about it. If a guy had to go, if a guy has to go, a guy's got to go. They're not going to delay one day to suffice somebody's mother's grieving. Trust me. As far as Harmit, I think a lot of people just don't invest time in anyone outside of New York because New York is widely considered the big brother, the head honcho of the Mafia. The Gray brothers were huge narcotics traffickers. So if you don't know who they are, look them up. And the last name is Graewe. Graewe. Yeah, look them up. Frederick was the other one. I think what a weird. This got to be Swedish, right? I would assume. Hartmut was actually called the surgeon. That's a pretty good mob nickname, Harmit the Surgeon Gray. But yeah, look them up. Obviously, I don't have time today to go into the whole dissection of who these guys were, but definitely check it out. All right, I just listened to Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson. During the interview, Rogan said that Marvin Hagler knew he would not win a decision over Ray Leonard, and the New England crime family and Hagler had a deal, lots of money that was bet on Leonard, and Hagler retires to Italy. Have you ever heard that story? Yes, I've heard that rumor before, but it's not reality. For starters, Providence never had that deep of routes into boxing. I'll just be honest, that is a Genovese. If you're looking for one Mafia family that ever had sort of the hands in boxing, it was the Genovese crime family. Nobody had their hands in boxing like the Genoveses did. Teddy Atlas was owned by the fucking Genovese crime family. I don't care what Teddy Atlas fucking says. He was owned, has been owned by the Genoveses since day one. Now, while I love Joe Rogan, he's a great podcaster, funny comedian, I think that he's believing a load of horse shit when it comes to that fight. The problem is The fight was so fucking close. And anytime you have half the crowd believing it went one way or the other, you're going to have assertions made. You're going to have, oh, this guy cheated. This guy took a dive. Boxing is one of the most corrupt sports in the world. But do I buy it? No, I don't buy. I don't buy it whatsoever. I know Don King was involved in a lot of fucking shakedowns, and he was involved sort of as a middleman with the Genoveses, and he was involved in a lot of boxing dives. So if you're going to go after anybody, go after Don King. Why Mike Tyson is even talking to that fucking scumbag after all the fucking money he stole from Tyson just blows my fucking mind. But I don't think that Hagler and Leonard was fixed. I don't think any of them fights were. All right, I finished hearing the audiobook of Philip Leonetti's bio. I know how much you love him, laugh out loud. I know everything he says is not always the truth, but I found it to be at least entertaining. My question is, Philip mentioned when his uncle Nicky did time for gun charges in a Texas prison, that 2 Mexicans protected him during the time. Does this happen often where Italian guys get protected by other races when they do time in prison in other states? So in most cases, the Italians kind of stick together. I don't know what specific prison he was doing it at, whether it was Altoona or Beaumont, but it wouldn't shock me if that was the case. Look, in prison, everything is different. But I wouldn't have a hard time believing that, to be honest. You keep in mind, Nicky was, 5'4", 120 fucking pounds. It would have been a way to keep African-American gangs away from him. It would have been a way to protect him. I don't think in all situations that happens, because a lot of time in Fed prisons, the Italians are the shot callers in prison. But not in all prisons. It just really depends which prison it was in, whether it's state, whether it's federal. But would I have a hard time believing it? No. But would Philip Leonetti also lie about that? Sure, he would, of course. All right. Is it true that Richard S. Castellano was the nephew to Paul Castellano? Also not mob related, but are you a boxing fan? Who wins, Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua? First of all, Richard Castellano was the actor who played Clemenza in The Godfather. There was no relation between Paul Castellano and Richard Castellano. I am a big boxing fan. I have been since I was a kid. Probably growing up, obviously, I liked Mike Tyson because he was at the forefront when I was a kid. I was a huge Arturo Gatti fan. Obviously, Sugar Ray Leonard fan, Pernell Sweepy Whitaker fan. Tyson Fury is a great boxer. And listen, I'm impressed with Tyson Fury for a couple of different reasons. One, he's fucking humongous. That's number one. Two, there's no bullshit with him. I think he has been completely fucking honest about who he is. A lot of the mental shit that he's had to endure his whole entire life. I tend to like guys who are not full of themselves. I tend to like guys who aren't your prototypical boxing cunt. And when I say that is the ones like Vladimir Klitschko was a boxing cunt. Stood there like he was the almighty everything, and he really wasn't. I sort of this bullshit with... Oh, Jesus Christ. I can't even think of his fucking name at this moment. If it comes back to me while I'm finishing answering this, I'll tell you. But Tyson Fury is a great boxer. And I think the fact that he is sort of honest about, some of the mental illness type of stuff that he does suffer from, to me, that's great. He's a great boxing fucking story. He's not a corrupt guy. He's a guy that can fight. And then I think it's an exciting time for boxing, at least from the heavyweights, because we haven't really had let's be honest, we haven't had a good heavyweight in a long fucking time. I think the last heavyweight boxing match, or at least the last heavyweight that I really truly liked, obviously was Mike Tyson. But Tyson Fury's, he's a great boxer. And I don't think Anthony Joshua stands a fucking chance. I think Tyson Fury's going to knock him the fuck out, and that's it. That's the end of the day. And obviously I didn't think of the boxer that I was oh god, why am I having a brain fart on this today? All right, if I think about it when I'm doing the rest of the show, I'll come back to it. All right, how important is ego for a mob boss, and is ego usually good or bad for the family? An example of good, an example of bad in your opinion. Hello from Detroit, Detroit/Windsor, Ontario. I think that ego is important. I think you have to, I don't know if so much of it's ego. You just have to have no fear. Ego can put you in a lot of trouble. Vito Genovese had a huge ego. Look where that got him, right? Whereas Carlo Gambino really didn't have an ego. He spoke softly, carried a big stick, so to speak. So I think ego is a bad thing. But I think if you're feared, that's the most important thing. Because if guys don't fear you, they're going to roll all over top of you. And I think that if you were ever going to sort of do a characterization of what a mob boss should be, he should be feared, he should be loved. You have to be, and we've talked about Machiavelli on this show before. I think we talked last week about it. It is very important to be feared, but you also have to have guys around you that care enough about you to protect you. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Do you have to be loved by your associates, like the guys underneath the captains? No, but you should be well received. And I think fear is the biggest common denominator. If you're a boss and you're afraid to use violence and nobody fears you, like Vinny the Chin, nobody would mention his fucking name. They'd point to their face because he commanded respect. Anybody that mentioned his name, he'd have them fucking killed. A lot of guys weren't caught on wiretaps talking about Tony Salerno. So I think, and I just think from the perspective of you have to be feared. If guys don't fear you, then they're going to talk. And once they talk, they get picked up in a wiretap, then it's all fucking over. So I think that it's important to be feared. I think ego's a bad thing. Nicky Scarfo had an ego. There's a difference. He had an ego about himself. Well, was he feared? Sure. Of course he was. He killed fucking everybody. Of course he was feared. But that was more ego on his behalf because he had insecurities. You can't have insecurities. You just can't. All right. Why did Tony Ducks give Vic and Gaspipe control of the family if they were drug dealers and he was completely against anybody messing with drugs? Couldn't he just keep control of the family while in prison like Carmine the Snake Persico or Philip Bristelli? So here's the first thing. All bosses historically have taken drug money. And this is one of the debates that we have on the show all the time because people consistently bring up fucking Paul Castellano and Angelo Ruggiero and the drugs. First of all, Paul knew they were selling drugs. Okay, it wasn't so much don't sell drugs; it's don't get fucking caught selling drugs. And that's really what it's always been. Joe Bonanno, we never sold drugs in our life. The fuck if you didn't? You were the biggest heroin trafficker out of all of them. So the idea that they don't sell drugs. And that Tony Ducks suddenly didn't know that was going on. Of course he did. And of course he took his kickback. They just don't want to know. Like, don't tell me what you're doing. Just make sure I get my money. And so, like I said, they readily accept money from those rackets. They just don't want to know. And Tony Ducks was no different than anybody else in that situation. I think Tony was old school enough to realize that while he still commanded respect, he probably could have run the family from prison, but it's over. The guy's going to do life in prison. It's done. And it's just my gut instinct that he was pretty much resolved to his fate. We might as well just let somebody else take over the family because at the end of the day, he's in prison. He's not going to, he may see some of that money, but what's he going to do with it other than just give it to his family? What's he going to do? He's not going to get a creature comfort at that point. And he probably just felt, and I don't want to speak for him, obviously, I didn't know the guy, but he probably just wanted the family to keep moving because sometimes when you hold on to the family and you refuse to let go of the fucking reins, it creates discontent. Malcontent, and it creates fucking agita and it creates a war. And so a lot of the things that went on in the Persico crime family could have been avoided if Carmine had just let go of the reins and let somebody else take over. You might not have some of them situations. And he probably just did what he felt was best at the time. Obviously, we know how that all ended, but that being said. All right, so I got a question for you. So at one point, New York was embedded in Las Vegas and they sold out a Vegas, Kansas City to Cleveland, and Chicago took over Vegas. So how does that mean? Tony Accardo and Carlo Gambino? So does that mean that Tony Accardo and Carlo Gambino talked about that, and Carlo Gambino signed off on it? That New York would stay out of Vegas as long as Chicago would stay out of Atlantic City. I don't know if it was really that specific of a deal, because I know for a fact Carlo Gambino owned holdings in Las Vegas forever, as did Ray Patriarca, who was from Providence, Rhode Island. In fact, Frank Sinatra is the one who was the front guy for Ray Patriarca in the Sands. Basically, Frank Sinatra took his money, he bought the shares, they were owned by Ray Patriarca, but he was just the front guy for that. And I know that Gambino as well had holdings in Atlantic City. So I think, the turf was just cut up a certain kind of way. And your assumption is probably closer to the reality than anything else. But I can't be 100% certain because obviously I wasn't there. But, I don't think that there was any way that New York wasn't getting something out of Vegas. I think that they were. Were they getting the bulk of it? No. No, not at all. Not at all. All right. Hey, Jeff, big fan. My question is regarding the Mafia families in Hamilton, Ontario. Just wondering if you could give an example of how or if the mafia families or clans would be structured, how many members, etc. Look, they're going to be structured almost identically to the mafia as we know it. Boss, underboss, consigliere, captains, associates. They call them by different names, obviously, depending on where they are in Italy. But as far as membership goes, that's something I cannot be 100% certain on because it's obviously going to fluctuate. If you have smaller clans over there. Let me give you like an example for Italy, right? So in Italy, they'll have, Andrangheta, the Camorra, the Saderno group in Hamilton. So in Italy, there's a bunch of big crime families, but then there's like hundreds of tinier little clans. That's how Italy works. So as far as the way the structure works in Hamilton would be closer to what you see here as far as structurally, boss, underboss, consigliere, captains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think even Andrangheta, as far as the way that they're structured in Canada, is probably closer to the United States than it is to Italy, to be honest with you. But, with Andrangheta, Andrangheta is not a fringe group. They have numbers in the thousands worldwide. They're in Afghanistan, the Germany, the London. They're fucking everywhere. But I also think if we look at Canada as a whole, they're going to be smaller numbers-wise than New York. That's just, so I would probably willing to tell you that they're probably the largest crime family over in Canada. It's probably around 100. But I don't think that they're going to come close to like the Genoveses at like 250 or 150 to 250. I just don't think you're going to have those amount of numbers. You're probably going to have a situation in Canada where there are less made guys and more associates. And that would be probably the difference here in between New York and Ontario. I could be wrong too. Maybe I'm completely wrong. All right, in Fierce City, on the third episode, the feds needed to pin the Galante murder on the commission. They had Bruno's fingerprints, which came back negative on the handle of the car used in the Galante hit. Then they realized that it actually needed the palm print due to the way that you open a door on 270s cars, and it would leave fingerprint marks. The guest investigators said they pulled Bruno back in and took his palm print after they got a match. On the documentary, the investigator also said that they had Persico, Salerno, and Bruno all held together up in a cell. They brought Bruno out for questioning, and he rared up on them. When they pulled him out again for a second round of interviewing, he was nice as shit. The feds alleged that Salerno and Persico pulled rank over the Bonanno captain, and he started to behave himself. So my question is, how can bosses pull rank over captains in other families? Well, pretty much, here's two things. Here's two things. First of all, he's a captain, right? Bosses are going to outrank all captains at every fucking turn, right? But in this particular situation, I particularly don't necessarily believe what the feds are alleging here. First of all, I get that they would put the three of them in a fucking cage together because they want to wiretap and listen in. But two bosses are not going to talk to another captain openly. But if they did, let's play it out that that's exactly what they fucking did. It would have been Salerno and Persico saying, stop drawing attention to yourself. Stop fighting with them. Don't answer any fucking questions, but just be calm and collective, because it's better that a guy is calm and collective in that situation rather than being like, you motherfucker, I'll take this eraser and stick it in your fucking eye socket and skull fuck your mother, rather than do all that. It's better to just say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, and be calm about it. When you rear up and you're acting like a fucking lion who's fucking shitting pine cones, what do you expect? But what more I can say is, you're not going to have a captain outrank a boss in any situation. And you're not going to have a captain from another crime family meeting with a boss of another crime family. That's just never going to happen. Now, granted, it's a prison type of situation, but I'm not sure how much I believe the feds in that, because I never believe what they have to say. But if it did happen, that would have been the reason why. All right, Jeff, great show. I listened in from the UK. Could you talk about a bit about Fat Andy Ruggiero? I don't know who Andy Ruggiero is. I think you probably are talking about Andy Ruggiano Jr., I guess. Okay, so let me rephrase this. A great show, listen from the UK. Could you talk a bit about Anthony Ruggiano? Like, I don't know who you're... Okay, and let's just go with Andy Ruggiano, because someone who's supposedly Mafia legend, I never hear his name a part of the rat show. Look, Ruggiano was a tough guy. He was a smart guy. He was a dangerous guy. He was one hell of a fucking earner. Everybody in Ozone Park knew who Ruggiano was. He was Cosa Nostra through and through. His gambling racket alone in Brooklyn was pulling in $50 million a year, if that tells you anything about the guy. He probably doesn't get a lot of credit because he's not John Gotti. I mean, John Gotti got all the fucking headlines, right? This is a guy that grew out a beard and then hit himself with the Hells Angels to try to keep the FBI off of him. But this is a guy that was a serious guy. He was an earner. He did not like rats. He would kill people that if he thought they were informing on him. And he ends up heading down to Florida after John Gotti took over his boss. And he would go back and forth to New York. Like I said, he despised rats, probably more than any other made guy in existence. And his son really turned out to be a huge piece of shit rat. But listen, he was definitely a man's man. He was a tough guy. He made a lot of fucking money. And you probably don't hear any more about him because in that circle of time, 1981 to like 84, John Gotti was on the top of every fucking headline. And there were guys that I think really got lucky in that time period because Gotti was everywhere, and other guys underneath of that who were very powerful captains could survive it. He unfortunately didn't, but that's probably likely why you didn't hear anything about him. All right, which individual came up with the Concrete Club racket? It was Criminal Genius. I don't know whose specific idea it was. I don't know if there was really one guy that says, hey, you know what we ought to do, Jimmy? I think it just sort of came out of an idea of controlling the construction rackets completely in New York. And all the families, obviously, every single family took proceeds from that. But that is the one thing that also came back to haunt them. Now, while they all made millions and millions and millions of dollars doing it, that is also the one thing that tied them into RICO conspiracy. That fucked them. So in a way, it's genius, but in a way, it was a horrible thing. And we see that a lot in the Mafia. Guys will come up with pump and dump schemes, and they get away with it for 5-10 years, and they get caught, and they'll go to prison for the rest of their lives. And so one of the things I've always said, too, is how much is enough? How much do you have to have? It goes back to something that I said like 35 minutes ago in the show. You know, the amount of time has got to be worth the amount of money you're going to get. So how much is enough? Is $5 million enough for you? $10 million enough for you? $20 million? How much do you fucking need? You know, have a number. And this is what I tell people that are involved in criminal stuff. I tell them all the time, have a fucking number in your head. And when you reach that number, get the fuck out and never look back. Nobody's going to kill you if you just say, you know what, I'm a captain. I'm pulling in $15 million a year. I'm done. Here's my 12%. Here's my 20%. I'm getting out. Nobody's going to say nothing to you. They're going to absorb your racket and they're going to keep it flowing. But have a number in your fucking head and get out. Because if you don't, you're going to end up in prison for 100 years. Sometimes people just agreed. Like, have a number in your head. You know how you could live in Costa Rica with $10 million? Or in the fucking Dominican Republic? Yeah, nobody really wants to live there. Do you have any idea the kind of money? All right. Michael Francis says he met with Vinny Gigante in an interview before. And it was common knowledge within the Mafia that he was the boss and Fat Tony was the front boss. So why is he entertaining on Fear City that Tony Salerno was the boss? How much did the producers of this show pay him? Laugh out loud. So here's the thing. If you watch any of Michael Francis's interviews, his story changes, his narrative changes consistently. The story's never the same from one interview to the next. He tells a lot of big fish stories. Yeah, was Michael a captain? Sure, absolutely. He wouldn't have met with Vinny the Chin for any fucking kind of reason. He wouldn't have met with Fat Tony for any kind of a reason. Let me tell you why. He is a captain in another crime family. That's not going to happen, especially with Vinny Gigante. He wasn't going to meet with nobody outside of his own family. This is a guy who didn't want to meet anybody. Tony Salerno, maybe. But how can you go from meeting Vinny Gigante one day to Tony Salerno the next? Oh, one day it's Vinny Gigante, the next day it's Tony Salerno. It's because Michael Francis is full of fucking shit. That's why. If you don't want to believe me, just do yourself a favor. Listen to all of the different interviews, and he'll change his stories just like all the other fucking rats do. Just like all the other rats do. He changes his story. All right. How was Francis able to muscle in on gas racket? You'd assume Casa was more powerful than Francis, and the Colombos aren't more powerful than the Lucchese's. Here's the thing. All right, so here's the thing on this, right? So first of all, a lot of the fear that Michael Francis instilled had nothing to do with him. He was not a fucking tough guy. His father was the fucking tough guy. That's the guy that people feared. They feared Sonny, not Michael. I mean, the guy was like, you could throw him against the wall like a wet fucking napkin. He was not a tough guy. He is very much similar to other people who, well, first of all, Michael Franzese was able to make money. That's number one. Number two is they live off their father's names. They're not afraid of them. They're afraid of the father. That will carry you a very far distance in the mafia. I'm just being honest with you. Listen, Michael has claimed in different documentaries, and he changes his story every single time, that he invented the tax scam. He didn't. I've got 3 or 4 different links to when Michael says, "Oh, I came up with the gas scheme," but it wasn't until recently that he admitted he didn't manufacture that idea. The guy's name was Marat Balagula, who was a Russian mob boss who ran the scheme. He's the one that invented the scheme. Michael Franzese tried to shake Balagula down. Balagula was very tight with Chris Flanagans, who at the time was the consigliere of the Lucchese crime family. It was Flanagans who told Balagula, "Don't worry about Franzese, he's nothing. And if Franzese steps out of line one more fucking time, you come to me, and then Gaspipe Casso is going to handle it." And so eventually the gas tax scheme gets spread out amongst the 5 families. So Franzise's claim that he invented it, honed it, is a fucking joke, and it's not fucking true. It sort of became the operation of Gaspipe because he was responsible for the safety of Balagula. And that's just being honest. So any idea that Franzese, turned it into like $1 billion enterprise is nonsense and bullshit. The money was already fucking there, and all the families were involved. Did Franzese make it more profitable? Absolutely, sure, 100%. I cannot deny the guy that. But he tries to make it seem like he personally did everything, which is utter fucking bullshit. In fact, other families, even the Colombos, had claimed that Michael was hiding and skimming money and not being honest about how much he had. And they wanted to issue his death warrant. There was a sit down over this. His father, Sonny, was pulled into the meeting, and they said, "Look, we think Michael's stealing money." And his father says, "If you think he did it and you want to kill him, fuck him, kill him." That ought to tell you something right then and there about Michael Franzese. He ripped a lot of people fucking off. He can deny that all he wants, but he did. Absolutely. All right, who was more authentic, believable mob actor, Joe Pesci or Tony Sirico? Listen, that's a tough choice because, both of them play that very close to home. I think Pesci is the better actor of the two, but let's face it, Tony Sirico didn't have to fucking act. He just stood there and was himself. He was the real deal. But if I had to pick one, probably Joe Pesci, to be honest with you. I think that Tony Sirico, God bless him, is just almost too fucking real. All right, do you think Frankie DeCicco would have participated with Sammy the Bull to take over the family if the situation required it, or do you think that that's blowing smoke figment of Sammy's imagination up? I doubt it, to be honest. I mean, look, if we take away the Castellano hit, Gotti never becomes anything other than a captain. I think Sammy probably would have moved ahead of John Gotti in a million other ways because he had the capability to earn a shitload of fucking money, and he was a dangerous guy. Sammy Gravano was a rat piece of shit motherfucker, and I don't like him. But the one thing that you cannot take away from Gravano is his ability to earn fucking money and kill people. So you can't take that away from him. Is he a piece of shit? Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing that you're never ever going to hear is how John Gotti was an incredible earner. And I'm not knocking Gotti. I'm just telling you the truth. He was not a fucking earner. He had his little schemes like everybody else, and he was at the airport and hijackings and all this. But Gotti was not known as a fucking earner. You point me in the direction of 5 guys who will tell you John Gotti was a hell of an earner. They're not going to tell you that because it wasn't true. And so from that perspective, I think that Sammy Gravano, had the shit with Castellano not happened, I think Sammy Gravano likely would have taken over that crime family. I want to be really honest with you. But like I said, I think ultimately Gravano would have been pushed further ahead of Gotti in terms of power. And I wonder truly what would have happened if Castellano hadn't have been killed and just went to prison for the rest of his life. I think things would have been very different. And would Frankie have gone along with Sammy to take over the family? Not if it had to do with Paul. No, probably not. But then again, I don't know Frankie like that. I didn't. Everybody that I've ever talked to that knew him said he was just, through and through fucking gangster. So who knows what he would have done. Do you think Paul Castellano knew that there might have been a chance that he was going to get whacked after Dela Croce's death? Or do you think that Castellano thought he was too powerful and that nobody would dare lay a hand on him? I don't think Paul considered it. Had he, he would have been a hell of a lot more cautious, I think. Maybe it was his ego. Maybe he underestimated what John Gotti was capable of. I think had he had the inclination that Gotti was going to take a move on him, he would have killed the whole entire Gotti crew. And that's probably what he should have done, to be honest with you. Imagine that Paul Castellano whacks John Gotti, whacks fucking Angelo Ruggiero, whacks fucking Sammy the Bull Gravano. Moving ahead, the Gambinos don't have the fucking problem that they have not fucking 5 years later. I just don't think, maybe Paul just didn't think Gotti had the balls for it. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe Paul Castellano got blinded by his own indictments or his own money. I don't know. All right. Do you think during the Pizza Connection days, someone like Sal Catalano or Gerlando Shasha ever made contact and or business partnerships with either the Medellin cartel or the Cali cartels? I'm sure they did, but probably more by proxy than anything. I don't think there would have been direct contact, like say, hey, Carlos, how are you doing? I think it would have been more indirect contact, like absolutely. Drugs were still coming from, Afghanistan to Corsica through France, into Canada, and then into the United States. And that's the same pathway that they're still using today for drugs, but with Colombia being active, and especially with like Sinaloa and Mexico, who are manufacturing there now, is a big thing. It sort of changes the narrative a little bit. But they have like, and we'll just use Pablo Escobar because everybody knows who Pablo Escobar was. Did Gerlando Shasha ever meet with Pablo Escobar? I seriously fucking doubt it. It would have been through intermediaries. And I don't think they probably didn't even have direct contact like that. But could the drugs be traced from Medellin to Cali cartels to fucking the mob? Sure, absolutely, 100%. All right. Hypothetical matchup. Let's say the Sicilian Mafia and the Medellin cartel had gone to war in the 1980s. Who would have won? If you're talking about the American Mafia, I'd go with the cartel. But if we're talking about the Mafia from Italy and Toto Reina, forget about it. No way the cartel survives, because the numbers in Italy are just, they trump what the cartel has. I'm just being honest with you. Maybe not like right this second, but if you take the numbers, what is it? I think I read somewhere it was like they estimate Andromeda to be some 10,000 members. That's like fucking insane. I don't think a Cali cartel has 10,000 members. So it really depends on, if you're talking about the American mob, forget it. No, absolutely not. All right. In your opinion, would organized crime get a pass if they were to help shut down these riots in big cities? They're somewhat already getting a pass under Donald Trump, because the sheer amount of organized crime task forces are not what they were. I mean, back in the day, and this is not going to be exactly right, but you look at the Gambino squad, it was something like fucking 15 different teams or some crazy shit. Post 9/11, post what's going on now, they're more focused, and they've put more money into, like I said, terrorism and other things. So the mob doesn't have really as many eyes on them these days. Look, the mob could kill fucking terrorists in the fucking streets. They could cut their heads off and stick a broomstick up their ass. But the feds are always going to go after mob guys. That's never going to end. Is there as much attention on them? No, absolutely not. Because the mob is not the number one problem anymore. It seems to be the number one problem when one of these fucking jerk-offs wants to make a name for himself like Rudy Giuliani did. So let's just be honest about that. All right. Why couldn't Nicky Scarfo keep control of the family from jail like some other mob bosses? I think because there was nothing to fear after Nicky Scarfo was off the streets. What are they going to fear? Nicky lost control. And if nobody fears you, I've said this a million times, even today, if nobody fears you anymore, and New York isn't exactly going to stand in the middle of a fight between warring factions, and they're just going to let it play out in gunfire, they're just going to stay out of it. After Scarfo did what he did, nobody wanted to meddle in that shit because it just wasn't worth it. Now, they sent Stanfa, but look at how that fucking ended. They thought sending John Stanfa to South Philly was going to work. How'd that work out? I love how people always fucking say to me, oh, John Stanfa was this. John Stanfa got his ass waxed relatively quickly. Everybody underestimated them guys down in South Philly. They had power, they had moxie, and they had fucking balls. Look at how that ended. All right, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we are going to keep going with the Q&A. Stay tuned on Mob Talk Radio. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. We are answering your submitted questions. Why was Dominic Cialo whacked? Only because he insulted Carlo Gambino publicly, or were there other reasons? It was likely one of a couple of different reasons. It also doesn't help that he gets indicted in a murder with Sammy Gravano, who at the time, him and Laborio Melito were together in the Colombo crime family at the time. And it also didn't help that Carmine Persico had heard whispers that Cialo was using young guys to do some murders. And when Persico wanted the names of those guys, Cialo refuses, which made Persico suspect that Cialo was pretty much trying to plan a hostile takeover. Cialo was also seeing a shrink, which would have been a huge fucking issue at the time. He also killed Larry Lampassi for no reason whatsoever. Lampassi was a much-loved and well-respected member of the mob. So there's several reasons why Cialo was whacked. And it sounds to me probably like it was more of a culmination of events rather than just one solitary reason. But I know that after he insulted Carlo Gambino, I believe, and I'm paraphrasing it best here, he called him a fucking old fart Don or some shit like that. That would have been enough to get him killed right then and there anyway. So there was probably a handful of reasons. But I think, ultimately what sealed his death sentence within the family would have been all the other things. But it also didn't help that he talked shit to Carlo Gambino. All right, I know you said in a way American wise guys could leave the life, but how is it in today's Italy then? Could Ndrangheta, Cosa Nostra, Gomorrah let guys leave that life? Why? In my opinion, I think anybody who wants to lead that way of life can, especially in America. But you have to realize, if you know too much, you've done too much, they're going to kill you. That's the bottom line. Italy is an entire different beast than the United States. And I'm not knocking American Cosa Nostra whatsoever, but in Italy, they seem to take that oath incredibly fucking seriously. And they'll not hesitate to kill you immediately, whereas here they might just chase you. But I think if you quit the life over in Italy, which is against the rules of the mob over there, one way in, one way out, you better run for your fucking life. They take that shit very seriously in Italy, and I don't think anybody would cry over making more money. But then they have to worry about a guy talking, and the fact that they don't have eyes and ears on you anymore, and you're suddenly not around, is going to bother them to the point of not knowing what's going on. It's going to lead to you getting killed. It's just a different animal over there, completely different animal. All right, Ndrangheta is heavyweights in Italy and in Canada, but they're also in New York. Why have there never been any implicated in anything heavy in New York? Actually, they have. In 2014, 7 guys got pinched in Brooklyn for allegedly participating in a narcotics distribution ring. Rafael Valente, known as Lello, Gambino associate Franco Lupoi. Who else? There was Charlie Cintaro, who was known as Charlie Pepsi, Dominic Ali, Alexander Chan, Christos Ferrasakis, Jose Alfredo Garcia, who was known as Freddie. They were all arrested in 2014. Obviously, it was a coordinated operation. Italian law enforcement and authorities. It was in coordination with the 17 that they arrested in Italy. And they were all members and associates of Ndrangheta in Calabria. Obviously, we know Frank Cali had at one point serious ties over there as well. But that was a big case, just the narcotics trafficking conspiracy amongst other crimes. So, yeah, in 2014, a bunch of them were actually arrested. But why you're not seeing more of it is probably because they're organized in a structure inside of a family that it's the same as a traditional mob family, but those guys really seem to be quiet. Not to make it a Sicilian and a Neapolitan sort of argument, but Sicilian guys are very hushed. They're very quiet in general. Whereas guys from northern Italy tend to be a little more gregarious and a little more lippy. Hate to make it like that sort of argument, but I think that the numbers in America aren't nearly the size as they are, say, in Canada. All right, were any of the Three Stooges, Mo, Larry, or Curly, connected to the mob at all during the 20s through the 50s? I know for a fact that they knew guys, obviously. But they didn't have direct relationships. I had heard years ago that Curly was friendly with Bugsy Siegel, that they had drank together a couple times. But at the end of the day, the Stooges tried to keep away from those guys, and they feared those guys. And I think had they been closer, there would have been evidence of it, because they would have used the mob to get them a better deal from Harry Kahn, who completely ripped them off their whole entire lives. They were very leery of those guys. And you'd be really hard pressed to find any evidence that they were anything other than just stand up, minded their own business kind of guys. Did they get ripped off? Absolutely. And I think had they had relationships that were deep like that, first of all, you would have gone to them for help because they were getting ripped off. Their entire career, they got ripped off and raped financially. So I think the fact that they didn't use those purse strings, so to speak, tells you that even if they had close relationships, they weren't about to use them to get involved in that kind of stuff. And there it is. Okay, so this question's going to get me in a lot of, not in trouble, but it's just going to create shit. But who's the bigger liar? Michael Francis, the informant that I can't talk about, or Ron Previty? Who tells the most lies? We know Previty is the biggest. The biggest liar of those three, I'm just going to say, is probably not Ron Previty or Francis. So does that answer that question? All right, did police officer Mario Biaggi really have a role in the Galante hit? No, absolutely not. Did Jimmy Burke get revenge for his son's murder, and how was prison like for old gangsters like him and Jimmy Coonan, Paulie Vario, and etc.? To my knowledge, no. Jimmy Burke did not take any retribution. It was a drug deal that went bad, and Burke really had no choice but to let it go. Did it make him happy? No, but it is what it is. And as far as prison goes, in the early days, they lived like kings. But prison post, say 1980, completely fucking different. The glory days in the mob, as far as what we consider to be the glory days, were over. Is there a difference between a government informant and a government witness? No, they're both rats as far as I'm concerned. Both rats. Explain how the point shaving scam works, please. Simply put, you either hold back on scoring or you score more, which affects the point spread. So basically, if you just simply repeatedly miss to try to keep the score where it needs to be to cover the spread, that's how that works. And in return, they get paid for doing it. Or they could take themselves out of the game, so to speak. All right. Do you think under bosses Gravano and Casso played their superiors as if they were in the Genovese system with Gigante and Salerno front boss, back boss? When you see documentaries and videos, it seems like they manipulated the bosses to get what they wanted. Salerno was really not that kind of guy. Salerno was a man's man. He was Cosa Nostra through and through. And he would have never tried to play Gigante like that because Gigante wasn't a stupid fucking individual to begin with. Gravano, however, played Gotti like a fiddle. I think, you'd be hard-pressed to say it any other way. He used Gotti, and listen, either Gotti realized way too late in his life that Gravano was treacherous and a liar and a rat, because I think at some point, I think there were wiretaps with Gotti complaining about Gravano. And so the thing is, why complain? If Gotti kills Gravano, a lot of shit doesn't happen the way it does. Gaspipe Casso completely played the fiddle with Ficamuso, but the Casso thing, I think anything with Casso sharing duties as far as the boss duty goes was a stupid fucking thing. It was a nightmare scenario from day one, and look how that ended. So I think from that perspective, Salerno was nowhere near any of those other guys at all, because Gigante was way too smart for that kind of stuff. Obviously, Gotti wasn't smart enough to see through it, and then he ended up paying for it. All right. Jeff, in your opinion, where does Joe Zarrilli, boss of Detroit, rank among other bosses in your opinion? What's your honest opinion of him? Top 20 of all time in the mob. He wasn't Carlo Gambino, but he wasn't a schlub either. Detroit probably does not get nearly enough respect that they should. And once again, it's more likely because outside of New York, a lot of guys don't get that sort of heat. They don't get that sort of notoriety. New York is always going to get the attention. That's the way it's always been, and that's the way it's always going to be. All right. As a professional creative artist, writer, producer, director, and actor for almost half a century, there comes a pivotally profound moment when it comes together and you suddenly realize, holy hell, we're really onto something significant here. When was your moment of revelation when the pioneering path that you're blazing? And do us a favor, Jeff, for once. Just accept the consummate compliment and don't deflect. Much obliged. Okay. So here's my thing. Was there a moment when I sort of realized that I was onto something different? Yeah, absolutely. I've sort of told this story before, and I'm not going to retell the whole story, but there was, first of all, this show is never meant to be what it is. I think I'm 120 shows deep, and I had to restart. I took like almost a year off at one point, and there was like 50 shows prior to that. So let's just pretend I'm like 250 shows in at this point. You know, and everybody knows, you know, I was doing other stuff before this. I've always been involved in this genre in some sort of way. But I remember that I was doing something totally fucking different than this. I was just getting started in podcasting in general. And a friend of mine called and says, you know, I was looking for some sort of outlet, something different to do, something that hadn't been done before. And he suggested I cover the Mafia. And he suggested that because of my family background, who I'm related to, people I've known in my life. And I sort of had a different sort of mindset to it. And I was like, fuck no, I'm not going to do that. Are you crazy? Like, I can't do that. It's going to create too many problems for me, you know, family issues. But he said to me, just do it from a historical aspect. If you just do it from a historical aspect and you keep it streets and you keep it real from the streets, nobody's ever fucking done that. And so I released it. It was against my better judgment, obviously, and I ended up doing it. And it was like the next day, I was like, listen, if, you know, this is just a gag. I'm going to do it once. It's not meant to be what it is. But I did it, and a lot of people listened, and a lot of people liked it. And then so I did a second one. I said, all right, if this doesn't get over 100 views, fuck this, I'm done with it. And it was like something like the second show that I did, and I put it out, got like 3,000, and that was huge for me. And so what I realized very quickly was that I'm not doing anything different than anybody else. There's a lot of people that do what I do, but they can't do it how I do it. They did not grow up the way I grew up. They aren't related to people I'm related to. They don't know people that I know. They aren't criminals. I think that there's, and that was a past part of my life. I've never denied that at one point or another I was a criminal. And I think that I'm coming from a different perspective than anybody else. I could sit here and read you articles online and make money off of it, and that doesn't take any fucking talent. When you take somebody else's work, there's no talent involved. Just the research itself that you have to do is one thing, but then I do something that nobody else does. I offer you my opinion. None of these guys offer you an opinion. They read articles, or they do like a biographical fucking dissertation that somebody else has done, and they don't offer you any input. They don't offer you the politics of it. They don't offer you an opinion. I tell people to get into it, and I have a friend of mine, Scott Williams Collier, who does the True Crime podcast. I tell him all the time, don't be afraid to give your opinion. You're allowed to have an opinion one way or the other. It doesn't make what I'm saying right or wrong. It just means I have a fucking opinion from a street perspective because I was in the streets, okay? That's what makes it different. The fact that I'm not afraid to take somebody on is different. Tell me, and this is not braggadocious, I'm just answering this guy's question. How many other people do you know that do what I do that stand up to rats, stand up to the federal government, defend fucking alleged gangsters? Nobody does that. Not a single fucking person. Nobody. So that's what makes what I'm doing different. I will stand up for my friends. I will protect my friends. I will go to fucking war for my friends. That's the way I've always been. And that's the perspective that I take with it. It's not, is it better than what everybody else does? No, I'm sure there's podcasts that are, better. Are they going to get better information than me? No. Do they know people? No. They're regurgitating a lot of other shit. That doesn't make me like a better at what I do. But if you don't have any character, you don't have any panache, you don't have any charisma, and you just sit here and you read, Sammy Gravano killed this one in 1980, like nobody wants to listen to that. And I'll tell you something. There's a social club I go to, and I don't want to mention where I go and who it may or may not be associated with, but I'm going to tell you something. When I first started hanging out at this place years ago, a lot of guys didn't like me because of what I do. They heard, oh, this guy covers the Mafia. And there may or may not have been some gangsters in there, some very serious fucking people. And I wasn't liked because people automatically think, oh, this guy's a big mouth. He shouldn't be talking about this, because there's a lot of old school guys. And some people truly fucking live that way of life. But here's what happened. They started listening. And the more they listened, the more they started liking what I was doing, because they realized I'm not a threat to them. I'm defending it. I am deflecting things. And I'm talking about the historical references and implications. And they all tell me the same thing now. You are the best at what you do because you get it right. You know the politics. You know the streets. You know the things behind the scenes, and nobody else does. George Anastasia can talk about the mafia using a rat to do it. But what he can't talk about is the politics, because he doesn't understand the conversations. He doesn't understand the street value. He doesn't understand that a murder isn't always a murder for the sake of a fucking murder. There's 10 other fucking things that happen prior to that that make that a reality. That's what I do well. And this is why people like what I do. And there are people that hate what I fucking do. My friend in South Philadelphia, I'm not going to mention his name, tells me all the time, just ignore the motherfuckers that don't like you. There's guys that are going to love you for what you do for us and for other people, and there's going to be some that are old school and fucking hate it. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is, regardless of whether they like you personally or they like what you do, they're still going to be respectful to you. And that's the whole point. If I can help a guy out of a fucking jam, if I can dispel the fucking putrid fucking rumors and the lies that the FBI do say and put out, then that's what I'm going to do. You name me one other person that fucking does that. And so when I came to a point, and I'm finally going to get around to answering this question, and I do appreciate the compliment. I don't put myself on a pedestal. I don't think what I do is any better really truly than anybody else, and I'm not better than anybody else. I just think why it works is because I'm not afraid. I'm not intimidated. I'll take on anybody. And it's just not on this microphone that I'll do that. I will do it to your face. That's anybody that really truly thinks, and there's a lot of them out there, and this isn't tough guy routine. Anybody out there that thinks that I won't say this shit to a rat to their face is fucking crazy, because I've done it, I will do it, and I will continue to fucking do it. And that's why they won't put me on a show like that, because I'm not going to kiss their fucking ass. I'm not going to allow them to lie and make themselves, and this goes for any of them. I'm not going to allow them to lie about people I know. That's number one. Number two, I'm not going to allow them to inflate who they really are. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you kill 20, 30, 40, 50, 100. You're still a fucking rat. You lose your manhood the minute you fucking do that. The only thing lower than a fucking rat in the streets is a fucking pedophile. And that's the fucking truth. So what's the moment when I realized, holy shit, I'm really onto something here? When the FBI wanted to come after me. That's when I realized, holy shit, I'm onto something significant. Because if I'm a bullshit artist and I'm all of these things that all my haters like to say, why the fuck did the FBI waste their fucking time trying to come after me multiple times? Not just once. Why did a fucking informant tell people I was in the mafia if I'm a fucking nothing and I'm a fucking nobody? It's not true, and it's a lie. But why, if I am so fucking unimportant and I'm a bullshitter and I don't know anything, why are all these people coming after me? It's because I tell the fucking truth, and people don't like the fucking truth, especially the FBI, who would allege that fucking I robbed Peter to fucking rob Peter to pay Paul. And so that's when I sort of realized that, yeah, I'm making waves. First of all, if nobody hates you, you're not doing something right. That's number one. And number two for me has always been the minute the feds wanted to come after me for X, Y, and Z, and then these people start making all kinds of crazy assertions, from Jerry Capisci to informants to cops and whatever else. The minute they start making up, oh, he's with this one, he's with that one, oh, he's alleged to be involved in this, and that's when you know that you're doing something, is when people go to the extreme to make up the most ludicrous shit ever, and then they believe it. That's the crazy part about these fucking jerk-offs, is that they make up a lie, and they get so delusioned with their failures in life that they hate you for your successes. And so that's truly the second time, and I'm going to make this brief because I got to move on. The second time that I realized that this had become something bigger than me is when people that I had heard of, who had never met, came to me and treated me with respect, accepted me into their life like I was a fucking brother or a cousin and a long lost friend. When I got the respect of people that I discuss, that's when I knew I was doing something significant. And I always will. At the end of the day, my sole motivation is not to be a millionaire. Everybody wants to be a millionaire. Who fucking doesn't? It's not to be surrounded by mob guys. My whole sole fucking purpose in this has always been to defend my friends. Because not everything that is levied about them or alleged about them is fucking true. And is it going to get me put in prison at some point? Probably. I hate to put that shit out in the fucking universe, but that's the reality of what I do. It's going to get me indicted at some point in my life, and I know that. Because the feds are not going to let some of the shit that they allege that I've done go. That's the truth. And I'm not making more out of myself than needs to be. Trust me, I don't want those fucking problems. But I don't care if they put me in jail for 5 fucking years. I'm going to defend my friends. I don't know nothing, don't see nothing, don't hear nothing, and that's the way I will be the rest of my fucking life. And that's that. All right. How did you avoid falling into that lifestyle beyond the point of no return? You seem to have the right connections, the mind, the fortitude, and the wisdom to be pretty damn successful in that way of life. I think insight to your story could help others avoid some of the pitfalls. Not knocking the life or saying it's wrong or evil, but we both know the odds of reaching the pinnacle are about the same as making the pros in sports. Keep doing your thing. I think the best way to answer this, I could answer this a couple of different ways. First of all, you don't avoid it. Listen, and I'm going to be honest with you. And this is probably more than I should say, but I'm not risking anything by saying this. There are people that still come to me with criminal things. Okay, there are still people that come to me with ideas. There are still people that say, I got this thing over here. It's a couple $1,000. I don't get involved for the exact reason why I expect you, or why I told you earlier when I answered the other question, is that at the end of the day, the shortcuts that you take in life, you have to understand where those paths are going to lead. You never know where the path is going to lead. You could have 3 paths in front of you. Okay, go to Philadelphia this weekend, Rhode Island next weekend, and then the weekend after I'll go to Boston. You don't know which one of those paths is going to lead to your death. So you've got to make a conscious choice. Is it even worth going? And I know that's sort of talking in circles. I don't... So here's the thing, right? So, I got to kind of be careful how I answer this in a way. You can have all the connections in the world. You can have all the intelligence in the world. You could be able to earn and make really a lot of money. And could I be successful if I were living that lifestyle? Yeah, absolutely right. I could be. How did I avoid falling into that completely? Like when I was a criminal, how did I avoid repeating the same mistakes? Well, it's plain and simple. I stopped making fucking mistakes. That's number one. Number two, it's something my father said to me that has stuck with me my whole entire life. God rest his soul. He told me when I got pinched, I said, Pop, you're going to go with me to court? And I was looking at a lot of fucking time. And he looked at me and says, you became a man the day you got arrested. I no longer owe you a fucking thing. You're my son. I love you, but you chose to be a criminal. You chose to break the law. Now you're going to choose to handle this on your own. And that's exactly what happened to me. And then shortly after all that, the FBI raided my house. I've been very open about that. And the FBI leaves, and my father looks at me, and I think my father's going to give me a fucking beating. And he looks at me and goes, I told you from day one, you have 2 choices in life. You can continue to lead this way of life, but get smart. Stop fucking talking to the people you are. You're smarter than this. Learn how to outsmart these motherfuckers. My father could have thrown me a beating. He would have been justified in throwing me a fucking beating for what I did and for what I was involved in. Because after all of this, he sat me down and he says, all right, I want to know everything you're doing, everything that you haven't gotten caught for, everything you did get caught for, A, B, C, D, and E, you tell me everything. And I told him some shit that I don't think most sons would ever tell their father about the evil shit they did, the horrible shit they did, the thieving they did, the stabbings, whatever the case may have been. I'm not saying any of those things happened. I'm just being overt about this. And I told him from A to Z everything I had ever done, everything I could ever get caught for. And the look on his face was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Because I think I surprised him at the brutality of some things that I was involved in at the time. And I'm not making a joke out of it. I'm not selling you a fucking fish story. I'm just telling you at one point in my life, I was the wrong fucking one. But rather than my father throw me a fucking beating, rather than my father throw me out of his life and telling you're a fucking scumbag, get away from me, I was his son. He loved me unconditionally. That is the fucking meaning of loving a child unconditionally. No matter the evil I did, no matter the horrible shit that I did, he would never fucking bail on me, never give up on me. But he told me, it was right then and there. He says, you have a choice. If you're going to go down this path, go ahead and go down it. I'm not going to love you any less. But don't expect me to bail you out. That's number one, even though he would bail me out of prison or jail if that were the case. He bailed me out the first time. Fucking $100,000 bond. He took care of that. He didn't have to, but he did. But then I was on my own in court. But he said, Jeff, if you're going to go down this fucking road, be smart. Outsmart the fucking feds. Outsmart law enforcement. If you can't outsmart them, get the fuck out and find something else to do with your life. And it was good advice. It was good advice. And I'm going to tell you why, because I never got caught for another thing again. And I just didn't. You think the feds coming to my house scared me or getting probation from a criminal trial because I had never been in trouble in my life before? You think that stopped me? That should have stopped me in my fucking tracks. And it didn't. For years I did other shit. I'm being honest about it. And some people will tell me I'm not smart for saying that, but I'm just being honest with you because I'm not going to bullshit you guys. I'm not. I'm honest with you, and that's the way I've always been. But I should have stopped, but I didn't, and I got away with a lot of other shit, okay? It doesn't matter. But I got smart. And so it really doesn't answer the question as far as, avoiding falling into that lifestyle beyond the point of no return. Because I think that you come to a crossroads, okay, you're going to make X, Y, and Z amount of money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Killing somebody is the point of no return. I've never killed nobody. But if you kill somebody, that's the point of no return. My father and my grandfather told me this as a kid. Don't ever do anything that you cannot put your fucking head on your pillow at night and not fucking sleep. If you cannot live this life without past shit bothering you, this is not the life for you. This is not the life for you. And my father said it the same way, just in a different kind of way. Outsmart them. If you can't outsmart them, you're not smart enough to be involved. And my father knew. He knew what was going on. And he never said another fucking word to me about it until he was on his deathbed in 2004. He looked at me. I held his hand as he was fucking dying. I'm being honest. And I didn't know him. And this is really not a direction I wanted to go, but I'm just going to be honest about it. My father was dying. My father went from being a stoic, hard-nosed Irish military guy to fucking 65 pounds, dying, struggling to breathe. And in his dying hours, he calls me into the room. I go, I didn't want to be in the fucking room. Who wants to look at their father fucking barely breathing? It wasn't what I wanted to do. But he said to me a couple different things. And the first thing he did was he apologized for dying, which was fucking nonsense. His concern, fuck all the pain. He was going through a massive amount of pain. He wanted to, he didn't want to quit. And it's not because, he did not quit because, he was trying to be a tough guy. He didn't want to quit because he was worried what was going to happen to me because he knew the life I was living. He knew the direction I was going. I had a fucking judge at 14 tell me I was going to spend the rest of my fucking life in prison. I'm serious. I was a miscreant. You have no idea. But my father would not relent to cancer because he was worried about me. And I had to tell him 4 hours before he died that night, Pop, it's all right to go. I'll be fine. Don't worry. I got siblings. I got friends. I'm going to be fine. I don't want you to worry about me ever. Don't hold on to this life in that much fucking pain because you're worried about me. That is ultimate love from a father to a son, is refusing to fucking die because you're worried about your child. And I think about that sometimes. I think about that a lot when people come to me with stupid fucking ideas. And the second thing that my father told me before he told me he loved me and died was that he said, always be smarter than everybody else. Don't get involved in dumb shit. The ends always must justify the means, my son. That's what he told me. And that sticks with me to this day. So it's not about falling into the lifestyle beyond the point of no return. It's knowing your limits. A lot of street guys don't understand their limits. Put a number in your head. Get out. Drug dealers. And I'll use an example of this. Did Pablo Escobar really need $70 million fucking dollars? Don't you think 25, 30 would have been enough? If he gets out 10 years faster, people might leave him alone. Ego drives fucking everything along with greed. And for me, I'm not a greedy guy. I've never been like that. I would rather have the respect of people than to ever have them look at me and say, he was supposed to give me 500. This is 482. What the fuck? His word is good for nothing? That's where I come from. That's where I stand. And anybody that truly knows me, not the people that pretend that they fucking know me. Saying hello to you does not constitute fucking knowing you. But anybody that knows me will tell you I don't get involved in stupid shit. That my ends are always going to justify my means. I'm only going to do something if it profits me or if it's getting me somewhere else. This show was only designed to ever fucking be a platform to take me to another platform. That's it. And so it's not a matter of avoiding the lifestyle. It's picking and choosing what is smart to do, what's dumb to do. And I'm not saying I'm doing any of that now, because I'm not. But I'm telling you at the end of the day that to be a success in that life, you've got to do some treacherous fucking shit. Am I capable of that? Yeah, probably. I probably have a miscreant mind, a criminal attitude towards everything. I'm not going to lie to you. But at the end of the day, if you can put your head on your pillow at night and you don't have to worry about a fucking thing, then you're a success. But if you put your head on your pillow at night and you have to worry about 18 fucking other things, it's not worth it. Do I have things at night when I put my head down I worry about? Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I get memory recalls of some stuff that I did that I may or may not regret, or maybe I regret not going further than I actually did, but that's just life. Does that make me crazy, mentally unstable, mentally ill? No, none of that shit. But do I have a criminal type of fucking mind? Absolutely. I'm not going to lie to you. But the difference between thinking that way and reacting that way are two different things. So I probably went way too far on that because the fucking jerk-offs that don't like me are going to exploit that. But it is what it is. All right. Hi, Jeff. I really enjoy your show. I was wondering if Tommy Karate had a high-pitched voice. The book that I read says he did, but I thought Philip Carlo wrote a book from the police files and court transcript. Did Carlo talk to him about the book? No, Philip Carlo never talked to Tommy Patera about the book. As far as Tommy Patera, I consider Tommy Patera an associate of mine, somebody I kind of know a little bit. And I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of different crazy assertions. And let me just say this about Tommy. I've heard guys who are still around. I had a conversation about him the other night with some serious fucking individuals, and they all said, he was a gentle, warm guy. But if you fucked with him or you fucked with his money, he was somebody you did not want to have issues with. A lot has been made of Tommy Patera being some sort of reckless fucking nut job, but that's not the case. Philip Carlo exploited Tommy Patera as a character and not as a fucking man. Sadly, Philip Carlo wrote a lot of shit that wasn't accurate. Does Tommy have a higher pitched voice than some people? Yeah, absolutely. What does that make him less of a fucking man? I'm not insulting the person that asked this question. I'm just saying, does he have a high pitched voice? Yes, absolutely. But let me tell you something about Tommy Patera. He did a lot of things for a lot of people that nobody know about. Good things. So he wasn't just like some fucking grim reaper coming out of a closet with a butcher knife. Tommy had some fucking scruples. I'm telling you. All right, what would happen if the Philadelphia Mafia or the New York Mafia crime family found out that they had a Fanuc and their family is a made member? Okay, so if you're not Italian, the Mezzo Fanuc is the term we use, and that's somebody who's homosexual. So let me just say this. And look, times are different, right? And me personally, I don't give a fuck if somebody's gay or not. I really don't give a fuck. What anybody does in their own house don't affect me. Money to me is the bottom fucking line. So are you saying that if a guy was gay and kicking up $50,000 a month to you, you're going to somehow not want to be near him because he's gay? You're not going to take his money? They're still going to take his money. They're just not going to want to be seen by him because some people have that insecurity, right? Listen, guys will take money from guys that are gay, but they're not going to fucking associate it with them because they have insecurities or how it looks. There's a manhood in the mob. I totally understand that. I'm not knocking anybody that feels that way. Would it create some problems? Probably. But why are you... why even ask that? What's the importance of that question at the end of the day? Money is money. Money is fucking green. Money don't come in different fucking colors. Money is green. Today's mafia, I don't think would really totally give a shit about anything. Money is money. But like I said, what people do in their private life don't fucking bother me. It's just, it is what it is. Without naming names, would you know how many college athletes ruin their lives by fixing games in return for the mafia payments? For some reason, I think it's more than one person on the outside. That's what I think. listen, a lot of college athletes took money. How many did, we're probably never going to know because, you get the typical 5 names, etc. But there are guys behind the scenes that do shit. I know for a fact that Bobby Hurley, who played, I think he played at UNC. Is that where or Duke? No, I think Bobby Hurley played for Duke and he played in the NBA. That's a name that I keep hearing from some people who would be in the know that he was a point shaver. I can't certifiably give you a sheet of paper that says Bobby Hurley did it, but I know that enough people have told me that is probably the case. But I think if you pay the NCAA, athletes, football players, basketball players, Division I, the ACC, if you paid them, you wouldn't have this problem. If you watch the movie Blue Chips with Nick Nolte, Shaquille O'Neal, there's a lot of different people in it. It's a great film. Blue Chips. Look it up. Watch it. That'll show you how that scheme sort of works. But if the NCAA, the ACC, Division I schools, the Big Ten, if they just paid college athletes, I mean, yeah, they're giving them a fucking scholarship to attend college, but it doesn't always pay for their fucking apartments. It doesn't pay for this, doesn't pay for that, because a lot of these guys that they do recruit come from nothing. They have nothing. And so they should pay them. Why shouldn't they? Because what happens when you play at the NCAA level and you blow out your knee and you never make it to the NFL? Now you've earned no money, but yet you have given yourself to your college. Let's not play any fucking games. The NCAA doesn't give a fuck whether you can spell rabbit or fuck rabbit. They don't give a fuck. Can you shoot hoops? Can you throw a ball? Can you hit the ball? Can you skate? That's what they fucking care about. They don't give a fuck about you other than what you could do for them and their college. So let's not pretend that grades is like the all to end all. So why not pay them? If the NCAA pays these guys, at least they have some incentive if, God forbid, something happens to them and they can never play again. I can't tell you how many guys' careers in college sports had their careers ruined by playing and had nothing to fucking show for it. And this is when you see guys selling drugs, getting in trouble. I think they should just pay them. If you do that, then you can take out the point shaving shit. That's the simplest way around it. I just don't understand why they won't do it. I mean, listen, they go to a bowl game. Do you know how much money these college fucking universities are getting from going to bowl games? And you can't pay a guy? It's bullshit. It's bullshit because without the player, they're not going to get all them fucking that fucking money. I'm just saying. All right, fun question. Personally, I think the greatest line in a Mafia movie was, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli." His wife told him to bring some cannoli home, and there was no way he was going home without them. His wife would kill him. My second is, "Made it, Ma. Top of the world, Ma. Top of the world." Jeff, what's your favorite Mafia movie line? It probably comes from Casino. It was when Joe Pesci is addressing the shit kicker who put his feet on the fucking table, and I think the exact line was, "You put your fucking feet up on the fucking table, you shit kicking, stinky horse, manure smelling motherfucker, you." And then he clocks him with the fucking phone. I think that was my favorite. All right. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Tony Bennett, Bobby Darin, or Al Martino. Well, first of all, Bobby Darin's real name was Robert Cassato. He was Italian, in case you didn't know. So Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Tony Bennett, whose real name was Benedetto, or Al Martino. Okay, let's take Al Martino off the list. I like some of his stuff, but that's not somebody I'm going to listen to a whole lot. Bobby Darin's great for certain things. Tony Bennett is good, but he does not have the vocal ability that Frank Sinatra did. And Dean Martin, who doesn't love Dean Martin? I know a guy down in South Philly that loves Dean Martin. Frank Sinatra to me is like a god. Sinatra had the best voice, the best pitch and phrase. But if you're talking about it like just king of cool, a guy that could be suave and sort of move around effortlessly, is Dean Martin. And Dean Martin sang a lot. And Dean Martin made it sound easy. If you listen to Dean Martin, he makes you think you could sing just like him. You can't. Because it's just, he has a relaxed attitude. He just, "Hey, I'm Dean, and this is just what I do, Pally, and enjoy it." Whereas Frank Sinatra, you're not going to find a singer who can pitch and phraseology is a big thing. You listen to a Sinatra song, you can feel how he feels. Singers who cannot put you in a position to understand how they feel. Like there's a Frank Sinatra song, "I'm a Fool to Want You," and it was about a guy basically kicking himself in the balls for wanting to love somebody that he knows is bad for him. And that song for him was about Ava Gardner, and you can look all that up. But Sinatra has a way to phrase and how to pitch and how to breathe that makes you feel anguish. And if you listen to Sinatra like that, you'll know what I'm talking about. Dean Martin could just make you feel good, like you're having a good time. And Dean Martin, for the most part, never sang morose, sad saloon songs. It was always upbeat, up-tempo, fun kind of stuff. Frank Sinatra has sung some songs that will fucking bury you if you're in a bad place mentally. I'm just telling you, he had that ability. It's not, in the case of Sinatra, not only is it the words, but you could write the words on the page. Tommy Dorsey, George Gershwin could write pages on could write lyrics. But without the way Sinatra interprets them, without the way that Sinatra brings them to your soul, forget about it. So Frank Sinatra is played daily in my fucking house. So is Dean Martin. Those two would be my favorite. If I had to pick one, obviously, I think Frank Sinatra, to me, is the better. But Dean Martin was just the king of cool. It doesn't get any better. All right. Was Tommy Karate as bad as they say, or is he just another Richard Kuklinski? First of all, Richard Kuklinski is just a serial killer, and I know that's the sort of the way that you're phrasing the question. Tommy Patero was Cosa Nostra through and through. He was not somebody you wanted to fuck around with. Is he as bad? Well, I mean, what's bad? You fucked with him, he killed you. I mean, a lot of guys have done that throughout history of the Mafia. Was he as bad in terms of, was he somebody you didn't want to fuck with? Absolutely. Was he ruthless? He could be. Richard Kuklinski just killed people because he liked it and he got off on it. Kuklinski was a fucking serial killer. Nothing other than that. All right, two more questions. Are you aware of any other times other than Greg Scarpa where the government came to Cosa Nostra for assistance? I have never believed that the government used Greg Scarpa in that Mississippi shit. I think it was a highway patrol guy who got fed the information, which led to them finding the students. I don't believe Greg Scarpa was the one who really did that. I think that's bullshit. I'll just be honest with you. But the only other time that I really believe that's probably accurately been portrayed or at least discussed was the CIA and Fidel Castro and the government acting complicit to try and kill Fidel Castro using the Mafia. Actually, I had a couple more questions than just two. All right. Was there ever an example of two families sharing a money scheme successfully? For example, the gas tax scheme was lucrative. If another family wanted to use it in their territory, blah, 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 blah. The five families benefited from the gas tax scheme. They also benefited from concrete. They benefited from casinos. So I think historically families have always gotten together to sort of to make money with people. It is what it is. All right, so that was actually the last question. I had another question repeated. All that being said, every time that we do a Q&A, Monday, Tuesday, go to Facebook, subscribe or follow. I don't know what the fuck it is on Facebook these days. Mob Talk Radio. Either personally message me and ask me the question, or you could just put your question into the hat, so to speak, on Facebook. And a lot of times other people will answer your questions and they get it right. So sometimes you can have your questions answered by people that are on the page. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of Facebook, and I don't want to get on a rabbit trail here, but there are a lot of Facebook groups that are Mafia aficionados. And I'm going to tell you something. 95% of them they have information, but they're usually wrong about everything. I have never seen, there's a few that are worse than others. But just the information they put out is just really not accurate. Everybody thinks they're a fucking theologian in those fucking groups. But one thing I will say about the people that are on my page, and I don't say that because they're on my page, I have the smartest fucking mob genre students. That's what I like to call them, my fucking students on my page. Because there are some people in there that absolutely know what they're fucking talking about. They may get one or two things wrong at times, but they're smart. They're smart people. I have the smartest fucking mob fans, genre people in the fucking world that are on my page because they know what they're talking about. They know the genre, and they're not afraid to, say they got something wrong, and they're not afraid to ask questions. I love questions. Don't get me wrong, and I don't know everything. Sometimes I got to research like the rest of everybody else, but I do believe that I have really the smartest fans in the world. I just got to say that. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about Whitey Bulger, and it's not a biographical sort of discussion. If you're looking for a Whitey Bulger biography, you can go on to Mob Talk Radio over on YouTube, type in Whitey Bulger, and I did a whole entire biography on him already. But there's something that specific I want to talk about, and it's not to label him a certain way or to give precedence or credence to the FBI or to Whitey Bulger, but there's some things that we should talk about because I want to get the fans' input, and that's why I'm going to bring this up. And so with that, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about Whitey Bulger. Stay tuned on Mob Talk Radio. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. We are talking Whitey Bulger, and we're not doing a biography, and I know I said that like 3 or 4 fucking times already. But the reason why we're not doing a biography is I've done it before, and there's going to be a bigger one coming once we move to the new platform, which is going to probably fucking include some of what I'm about to say. And I want to talk about the documentary Whitey Bulger, the United States of America versus Whitey Bulger. Now, if you've seen this documentary, there's a lot of different claims. And what I have to say out of the gate, first of all, is that Whitey Bulger was an informant, okay? I'm not saying that he's not. But what I'm trying to sort of throw out there, at least to you, the people that listen to my show, is that he was an informant, yes, but was it like the FBI has claimed, like what a lot of other criminals have claimed? I don't think so. And there's reason to suggest why that's not the case. I'm not defending anything that Whitey Bulger may or may not have done, but from my perspective, it's if the person telling you that Whitey Bulger was a rat is lying and is scheming and caught breaking the law, such as the case in the Joey Merlino trial with the FBI agents that were reprimanded. In one case, one was fired for how they handled that. If the people prosecuting the case are not telling you the fucking truth, then you cannot believe everything that you're spoon-fed, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of facts, and we're going to talk about them as we go along. So according to the FBI, Whitey Bulger joined Team Fed after his release from Alcatraz in 1968. And allegedly in 1975, childhood friend and FBI agent John Connolly approaches Whitey Bulger to give information to the feds in return for them just sort of turning a blind eye and letting him do what he wanted to do. It was John Connolly who told Bulger that Italians were giving him information about Whitey. Let me rephrase that. So John Connolly tells Bulger that, listen, the Italians are giving information on you. It's better that you give information to us. Do unto others as they do unto you is sort of what they were discussing, and we can guess who those Italians were. It was either Stevie Flemmi or Frank Salemi, and in both cases could have been them. The move on its face was pretty much a win-win for Whitey Bulger. He could inform and he could take over the rackets in Boston from the Italian Mafia. Now, on its hinges, that statement is pretty much a good enough reason for Whitey Bulger to want to do it. But there are some things we need to discuss. So in just 2 decades, Bulger was able to manipulate most of the FBI agents who were overseeing his case, which include supervisory agents, with money, with gifts. And it's been alleged that Whitey Bulger gave John Connolly over $500,000 in 20 years. Those around Bulger were getting arrested, and this is what is factual, is that a lot of people around Whitey were getting arrested, but he wasn't. He was escaping indictments. Now, that would lead a lot of people on the streets to believe that he was informing. But what if I told you that John Connolly was lying in 302s? What if I told you that John Connolly in these 302s wasn't giving accurate information? What if I told you in 700 pages of 302s, not a single name or crime was mentioned that led to an indictment? Is he still a rat? Absolutely, because if he was providing that information to John Connolly, then that would make him an informant. However, John Connolly is not a squeaky clean guy, as we're going to see as we go through a little bit of this. It was through John Connolly that Whitey Bulger would find out who was giving up information about him, and in return, in one particular case, Bulger summoned that informant to a house where he whacked the fucker in the basement. Then in 1994, we know that John Connolly tipped off Whitey Bulger that an indictment was coming, and Bulger flees for the next 20 fucking years. So based on the fact that he had a relationship with the FBI, obviously he did. Okay, there's no disputing that. Him and John Connolly were very tight. I dispute a lot of what John Connolly has said. The feds have disputed almost everything John Connolly has said, but the FBI is going to have to pad their back pocket for a lot of different reasons, because this is a massive corruption case. But the mere fact that John Connolly was given the names of informants to Whitey Bulger, who then turned around and whacked the fucking miserable pricks, it shows that there was some sort of a relationship. And if we look at the streets, you know, that makes you an informant in the eyes of street guys. So I listen, people are going to take umbrance with what I say here, and they're going to say, oh, he's saying he's not a rat. I'm not saying that. What I'm telling you is I think a lot of the things that have come out about Whitey Bulger aren't really accurate. It was Whitey Bulger's claim that he was never an informant. Rather, it was Stevie Flemmi who was giving up information, and it was Bulger who was basically paying the feds and the stadies for information. Now, Stevie Flemmi was a lifelong rat. Bulger worked hand in hand with them, so there's no way that Bulger didn't know that Stevie Flemmi wasn't a rat. So basically on that hinge, Bulger is a rat because he allowed a rat, hung out with a rat, makes him a rat. A claim, that is plausible, given a ton of the actual facts that are actually in that particular case. The sheer amount of corruption in the Bulger case gives stance to plausibility that maybe Whitey Bulger wasn't necessarily the informant the FBI has made him out to be. There's a guy by the name of Robert Fitzpatrick, who was an FBI supervising agent for the FBI in Boston. He oversaw everything there. He has gone on record multiple times to explain that Whitey Bulger gave them nothing to work with. He gave us useless information that wasn't even real, couldn't be corroborated, led to no investigations, led to no arrests, led to no prosecutions. This agent knew 6 years into the deal, allegedly between Whitey Bulger and the feds, that, 6 years into this, into Bulger's alleged association or allegations to there being a deal between the feds and Whitey Bulger, he realizes that Bulger's not giving them anything. So what he does is he goes and he sees Whitey Bulger at his house. And John Connolly is actually in the house at the time, which made the supervisory agent feel a little bit strange. But Bulger tells him that he wouldn't testify against anybody. He wouldn't give anybody any information on anybody. That, in fact, he was the one that was paying for information, not giving it. After the meeting, Fitzpatrick wants to cut Bulger off. He wants to terminate whatever agreement there is between Bulger and the government because he realizes Bulger's not doing anything. So according to Fitzpatrick, Bulger wasn't giving any information that could be used. It was all nonsense. It was lies. And they were basically, Bulger was using calculating moves. But because of that, Bulger has to be cut off. Prior to Fitzpatrick's involvement, he still hadn't given up anything on anybody. So what Fitzpatrick does is he goes to the chain of command and he explains to them, this guy's given us nothing. He's too close to John Connolly. We don't have any information to make any arrests. He's not giving us anything on the patriarchal crime family. This is basically accumulating to fucking nothing, and we need to cut him off. But the FBI, for some reason, doesn't. So on Connolly's end, he fabricated hundreds of FBI 302s. What was known is that the exact same 302s that Stevie Flemmi had were identical to Whitey Bulger's, meaning Connolly took Flemmi's statements and Flemmi's sort of information and just kind of deleted certain portions. It almost verbatim reads, exactly the same way. And so Bulger's stance was, listen, I never gave them information. All he did was take that out of Stevie Flemmi's file and put it in mine. The problem with that is that Stevie Flemmi was a rat, and Bulger knew that, and he was doing business with Flemmi. So that means he is sort of he's complicit in ratting only by his association. So an average 302 is thousands of fucking pages. If Bulger was an informant since 1968, those files would have been 60, 70, 80,000 pages of information. He would have testified. A ton of people would have gone to prison. But Whitey Bulger's file, 700 pages, and the majority of those pages didn't contain names, dates, or even half-assed facts. Connolly, who was bought and paid for by Bulger, covered Bulger's ass and made stuff up. That's certifiable fact. Connolly doing that did two things. It protected his friend from Southie, and it enabled him to rise the ranks of the FBI. And those are certifiable facts. So there's an issue that takes place. So Fitzpatrick, who wanted Whitey Bulger gone, tried to protect an informant by the name of Edward Brian Halloran, who he knew was giving up information on Whitey Bulger. He went to his department heads and explained why Halloran needed to be protected by the FBI immediately, because he knew that John Connolly and Whitey Bulger had some kind of weird friendship going on. They scoffed at the idea and said, oh, nobody's going to do anything. This is ridiculous. How would Whitey Bulger even find out that Halloran was giving them information? And what happens is Connolly finds out. He tells Whitey Bulger exactly who's ratting, and guess what Bulger does? He kills him within a few days. Even after that, the federal fucking government continued to turn a blind eye to what Whitey Bulger was doing. Not a single file, not a single alleged fact put anybody into jail. Those are fucking facts. I have read the entire 700 pages of Bulger's file, and you would expect, especially with 302s, that there would be some details, at least somewhat of a timeline, and there just isn't. If Bulger was completely being complicit with the FBI, if he was giving information up, and that what he was allegedly saying was accepted by the FBI is factual, then that would be hilarious. It reads like a sort of a comedic book. It's been Bulger's assertion that John Connolly would fabricate information contained in those files to keep Bulger out of harm's way because they were friends and Bulger was paying him off. Multiple people, multiple agents were admitting that Bulger paid them for years. So that part of the story is accurate. According to Bulger, the FBI... according to the FBI, told them after the hit on Halloran that word on the streets was that the Italians did it. It would have fallen under the patriarchal crime family. But look, it doesn't take rocket science to know that Halloran was with Bulger. Everybody knew that. So when you look at what Fitzpatrick attempted to do by protecting Halloran, then all of a sudden Halloran gets whacked. How could anybody not assume that that was not Whitey Bulger that did it? How could the FBI bypass that? Just that lie on its face shows you that the FBI didn't give two fucks what happened on the streets. They certainly didn't give two fucks what Whitey Bulger did. And they all, not just John Connolly, turned a blind eye to what was going on. Their shallow defense that Bulger said otherwise carries no weight because there is no 302 to memorialize him going to the feds saying, well, I think it was the Angulo brothers that did it. The FBI would claim that Bulger gave the names of two Charlestown gangsters who likely would have had reason to hit Halloran. The problem is, nowhere in any of those 700 files is that mentioned anywhere. Nothing. So to believe that the FBI's side of the story isn't backed up by anything. It's, he said this to me. That's basically what it is. Without proof, without paperwork, it becomes a he said, she said story. And from my point of view, what is the one thing that everybody always says? I want the paperwork. I want the paperwork. None of the paperwork supports anything that they say. So the evidence, against Boston suggests more than anything that he probably was not an informant to the degree that the feds want you to believe. We know that John Connolly was stealing testimony from other informants and attributing it to Whitey Bulger. Those are known facts. Connolly was convicted of that. When the Medford Depositors Trust got robbed, John Connolly claimed that the information was supplanted directly by Whitey Bulger, but it didn't come from him. He lied under oath and was caught. Whitey Bulger did not give up the information on that robbery. It came from somebody else. But Connolly had told the FBI that with Whitey Bulger telling him that information, it saved 2 federal agents' lives during the robbery. And the fact is, Bulger didn't tell him that. It was Connolly lying to enable himself to get promotions. It was Connolly finding a way to keep Whitey Bulger safe from prosecution. And it also gave Connolly the ability to keep accepting money and kickbacks from Whitey Bulger. He did not, under any circumstances, wanted to lose Whitey Bulger. And listen, this had nothing to do with the fact that they were great friends and he just didn't want to see nothing bad happen. It was the fact that Bulger was paying him off. Connolly taking information from other files and attributing it to Whitey was corroborated at Whitey's trial by defense lawyers questioning the government's witnesses in addition to the FBI agents. They showed exactly the same reports from Whitey's files that were in the others. They compared and contrasted and said, look, this is the same fucking shit. Jeremiah O'Sullivan, the head of the Federal Organized Crime Task Force, who bugged the Mafia offices and gained the evidence to convict the Angulo crime family at the time, said that not a single fact or rumor or anything that Whitey Bulger ever said was useful to them. It was nonsense and bullshit. John Morris, who was an FBI agent who supervised that electronic surveillance, said that they already had all the information to get the bug on Angelo's headquarters, and it had nothing to do with Whitey Bulger. But he wanted to protect Whitey, so he ordered the case agent to add his name to the affidavit, meaning none of the information supplanted that led to the wiretaps and the Angelo's social club came from Whitey Bulger, but they put his name in it because they felt it gave precedence to the actual case itself, and it kept Whitey out of any indictments. So what you're seeing here is a huge cover-up by the FBI. They're lying because Whitey didn't give them that information. This was all under oath, all in court transcripts. If you don't believe me, look it up yourself. But Connolly and other agents are using Bulger's name because his name allegedly carries weight, and they were lying. So on its hinges, if they were convicted of these crimes and they admitted under oath they fabricated evidence, then how the fuck can we believe on any level half the things or a quarter of the things that they say against Whitey Bulger? This is all true stuff. So, and then in 2006, the FBI gets sued for over $1 million for the mishandling of Whitey Bulger, for the mishandling of Stevie Flemmi, especially when it came to the 1984 murder of informant John McIntyre. Because what did they do? They went to Whitey and they said, listen, John McIntyre's ratting you out over the murder of the highlight guy out in fucking Midwest somewhere. John McIntyre starts telling the fucking truth, or at least telling his version of the truth to the FBI, and the FBI drops a name to Whitey Bulger. What does Bulger do? He kills him. So the FBI, from day one, every single step, A, B, C, D, E, is complicit with allowing Bulger to do what he did. So to say that Whitey Bulger didn't work with the FBI isn't accurate. He did. Okay, I think that's certifiable. But I think there is more proof that lends itself to the idea that Bulger was using them, not him, because they knew they were getting junk from Bulger. They knew that he wasn't telling them the truth on anything. He was making shit up. They knew that the majority of his 302s were nonsense. And if that's the case, and they still continue to be so corruptible because of the money Bulger was paying them, of course they're going to turn around and blame Bulger for fucking everything. And of course guys on the street who are getting indicted and Whitey Bulger may have taken a part in this crime and that crime, and they don't see him getting indicted with them, are going to start to talk. That's just average. That is just reality. So Whitey Bulger and Ray Patriarca were very close. Have you ever asked yourself, and I'm not defending anything that Bulger did, but I'm just trying to give you some plausible thinking points. Have you ever asked yourself if Whitey Bulger was going to give up the Italians? Why wouldn't he give up Ray Patriarca? They knew each other. They had business together, and Patriarca was 10 times more powerful than the Angelos could ever aspire to be. The Angelos were not a traditional Cosa Nostra guys. They bought their way into the Mafia. They didn't earn it. And had Ray Patriarca Jr. not been as inept in certain ways as he was, the Angelos never would have taken over any leadership roles in that family to begin with. Why didn't Whitey Bulger give up Ray Patriarca? Surely that would have given Whitey way more credibility as an informant It would have bought him, fucking 20 more years on the fucking streets if he gave up that kind of information. And he didn't do it because it's my belief, at least in part, that he didn't give them anything of consequence. And that's not to nullify his relationship. That was still not from a street perspective, it's still a fucking a rat move even talking to the feds. We can argue that maybe he was a soft rat. But the thing is, there is no evidence that proves that Whitey Bulger was ever supplying any information to the feds that led to a prosecution. At no time did he testify. At no time did he ever sit down and proffer. There are no signatures with his fucking name. He didn't sign any paperwork in his own name. In fact, his defense attorney prior to the trial wasn't able to corroborate a single photo, a wiretap, nothing that drew a straight line from Whitey Bulger to the feds other than Whitey Bulger saying he paid off everybody in Connolly getting caught admitting and other agents getting caught admitting to taking bribes and money. It was the lawyer's stance that Bulger played them and got away with it. And it was the sheer corruption of the FBI and the money which enabled Bulger to keep greasing the wheel. Connolly, for his part, was probably the most corrupt fucking FBI agent the world has ever seen, next to Lynn DeVecchio, excuse me. So in the streets, even talking to the feds are going to label you. If you sit and you proffer, you're a fucking rat in the streets. It doesn't matter what excuse you use. So from that perspective, because Whitey Bulger didn't technically proffer, okay, we can take that off the table. Did he work with John Connolly? Yes. Was Connolly a bad agent? Yes, but he still works with the FBI. Is Stevie Flemmi a rat? Yes. Did Bulger know that Flemmi was a rat? 100%. So does that make Bulger a snitch? It does. But at the same time, I can tell you this. When you take Bulger's 302s, which are the 700 files that they have, and you compare them to another alleged rat, there was more certifiable information on this other guy's 302 than there ever was Whitey Bulger. And I'm not saying what Whitey Bulger did was correct, but I'm saying that if you're gonna label a guy that, what would it take? And I'm not saying this is accurate, but Kevin Weeks, let's talk about it. He's a fucking rat. So let's pretend that Kevin Weeks is working with Whitey Bulger all these years. Guys are getting arrested. Whitey seems to escape indictments because of his friendship with John Connolly, and the rest of the FBI agents buried it. And then the FBI goes to him because they're afraid that if Whitey Bulger ever fucking talks, he can destroy the FBI with everything that he knows. And they tell that to Kevin Weeks. And they tell Kevin Weeks, listen, Whitey Bulger's ratting you out. He said all kinds of things about you, which there's no proof that Whitey Bulger ever gave Kevin Weeks' name, ever. What do you think Kevin Weeks is going to do? Fuck Whitey. 20 years I work with this guy, and he's ratting everybody out, then he disappears and doesn't get caught in this indictment? Fuck him. That's exactly how that went down. But Bulger, from everything that I see, everything that I've come across, it's the FBI's versions of events, which the 302s do not back up anything that the FBI has alleged. It's just very strange. And listen, I'm not saying what Bulger did was right. He used the FBI to his advantage. I'm sure he gave them something along the way. But in the 700 pages that were there, there's nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing. The mere fact that he had a relationship with John Connolly, was that wrong if you're in the streets? Yeah, absolutely. The fact that he worked with Stevie Flemmi is more of an indictment on Whitey Bulger's character than anything else. Because he knew Stevie Flemmi was ratting. And he went along with it. Because it didn't affect him. But in the streets, if you're going to proffer, you're going to rat like that, you can't work with a guy like that. You can't be around a guy like that. And so I'm not saying that Whitey Bulger wasn't an informant. What I'm telling you is I do not think it was nearly as fucking crazy as the FBI has alleged. If Jeremiah O'Sullivan hadn't died prior to this Bulger trial, I think things might have been a little bit different. Because I think that there was a close relationship between Jeremiah T. O'Sullivan and Whitey Bulger that the public doesn't know about. At least not to the extent. Because O'Sullivan could have backed up some of the things that Whitey said. And I'm not saying that he would have done that. He was the head of the FBI in the Boston area or whatever, head of the Organized Crime Task Force, so he probably would have run for the hills. But this whole entire trial, this whole entire case is hinged on the FBI being terrified of Whitey Bulger exposing agents. And he did. Multiple agents got deep shit. Connolly's doing a life sentence. And there were other agents that allowed this to go on. Fitzpatrick, in his own way, has said that he was given no opportunity. Every time he tried to go up the chain of command and tell somebody, they laughed at him. Good, whatever, or they buried it. Because whatever they were attempting to do, which was really take down Italian organized crime, was more important to them than keeping the devil in their closet. And I think the thing that's fucked up, I mean, look, Whitey Bulger got what he deserved at the end of the day. I don't think anybody's going to dispute the way he died. You know, you get what's coming to you. The fact that he worked with the FBI to some capacity and was friendly with people tells you a lot about him. But the bigger conspiracy here and the bigger thing that I want people to focus on is that just because the FBI tells you so, it doesn't mean it's so. With the sheer amount of fucking disreputable, disgusting, lying fucks in the FBI, just on this case, has to give you pause and make you stop and kind of think about things for a second. I'm not nullifying anything Whitey did. I'm not saying he was a great guy. I'm not saying he didn't rat, because he did. But the reality is that if the FBI is caught lying about 15 things that are very important to the case, then how can you believe everything that they say? And I get it from a street perspective. Everybody's getting arrested around you but you. You get tipped off to flee the fucking the state before all these indictments come down. I know how that looks, but you don't think that the FBI is capable of planting that sort of nonsense into a guy's head who's looking at a life sentence? That's the game they play. And I'm not saying that Whitey Bulger was innocent, but at the same time, this is the same storyline we've seen for not 1,000 years, but for a long time, especially when it involves organized crime. Oh, everybody's getting arrested but this guy. What the fuck? Oh, you're going to try to give me a life sentence, and Whitey Bulger has like $10 million and he's split because his little boyfriend, John Connolly, fucking tipped him off. Fuck him. I'm not going to do time for his bullshit. It's a symptom of Kevin Weeks was weak. He's a rat. Gave up everybody. Flemmy, rat. Gave up everybody. But the fact that Bulger, kept those sort of relationships makes him a rat. So I'm not debating that. So I want to know what you guys think. Look into it for yourself. I'm just simply speaking from the perspective of I don't think it was as in-depth as the FBI has alleged. I think there's way too much fucking corruption to believe anything. But of course Whitey's going to tell you he wasn't a rat. Of course he's going to say that. That was his big thing. He didn't want to be called a rat because he was from Southie. If you're from Southie, that's the one thing you don't want to be called. But he was. And Whitey couldn't live with that moniker on his name, and I get it. But I also think that the real story never came out, and it probably never will. Just like his murder. Everybody knows who did that. I don't think there's any fucking surprise who did that. But it's awful fucking suspect to me that a guy who gets transported to a prison is dead within 3 hours of getting there. How did they even know he was coming? Word travels, right? Please. I think the feds wanted to silence him. They didn't want anything else coming out. And did he get what he deserved? 100% certifiable. He got what he fucking deserved. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're ever going to know the full culpability of Bulger and what he said, because what has been presented, it doesn't pass the smell test. So what do you guys think? Message me over on Mob Talk Radio and give me your thoughts. All right, so all that being said, that's going to be for the show for this week. We will be back next week with an all-new show. Hopefully in the next week and a half, I will know more about the sort of the changes that we're going to make as far as going on the new platform. I got a lot of guests that are going to come on. I'm excited about that. I'd love to announce one or two of them because I think it's going to be big. But I'm going to keep that silent for right now. But like I say all the time, if you don't believe what I say, look it up for yourself. Take the time. Take 10 minutes out of your day and just look up information. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. I have opinions. Doesn't always make me right. But the one thing that I do on this show is I don't lie to you. I keep it real and I keep it streets. And that's the way I roll. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You're entitled not to like it. And as I tell everybody, every single one of my fucking haters, you think you can do what I do? Do it. Go ahead and do it. They never do. They got all the time in the world to sit at home jerking each other off. They don't have any time to fucking do any research or facts. That's life. Forget about it.